Anchor.fm is great. It's the easiest way for you to make a podcast. Now, it's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, which is what I'm doing right now, right from my phone. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and on many more platforms. You can make money with your podcast if you want to, with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place and more. So please download the free Anchor app right now or go to anchor.fm to get started. You will love it. Trust me on this one. You will love it. If you've ever thought about making your own podcast, now is the time. Anchor.fm is the place.
Are you interested in the paranormal? Murder mysteries, cryptocurrency, and thought-provoking interviews? Then check out Crypt Rick's I've Been Thinking on YouTube, or every Monday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Studio A at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Welcome to the Crypt.
Talk about the four most vital things, in my view, affecting all of humanity. Number one is UFOs and aliens and their agenda for the advancement of humanity. Number two is the Jewish establishment's control over all aspects of human civilization. Number three, the truth about Adolf Hitler, how he was the opposite of what we've been told. Number four is advanced ancient global civilizations. Join me on the Brian Rue Show, Tuesday nights from 6 to 8 on Studio B on Revolution Radio.
The original machine had a base plate of prefamulated amulite, surmounted by a malleable logarithmic casing, in such a way that the two spurving bearings were in a direct line with a panometric fan. The lineup consisted simply of 6 hydrocoptic Marsal vanes, so fitted to the ambifacient lunar wane shaft that side fumbling was effectively prevented. The main winding was of the normal lotus-o-deltoid type, placed in panendermic semi-boloid slots of the stator, every 7th conductor being connected by a non-reversible tremie pipe to the differential girdle spring on the up end of the gram meters.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio, taking the confusion out of transmutated lunar girdle springs for 4 years and running. Revolution Radio, the #1 listener-supported alternative media radio on the planet. Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of this program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at higher risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Hardcore research and endless rabbit holes can start to wear on anyone. False flags, government corruption, mainstream media lies. It's a battle for humanity that we all must join. Now, most people may think this leaves no time for the things they enjoy in life. I believe we can do both. So join me while we analyze music, movies, and more to uncover their occulted messages and meanings, allowing us to still learn while we all decompress. I am your host, Crypt Rick.
Welcome, everybody. It is another episode of Crypt Rick's The Decompression Hour. This is the hour you guys all know very well by now that I like to just, talk about things that interest me and I look into a great deal, like definitely in music, as you guys have heard me say in the past, and movies, and lately documentaries that I've been checking out. So these are things on certain topics that I just really enjoy looking into, and I like discussing. So sometimes you got to put down the really hardcore stuff, and at least for an hour, and kind of talk about other things. So I'm really enjoying talking about documentaries the last few weeks. You guys definitely know that last week I was talking about The Hunt for Skinwalker, which I was letting you guys know. And I also said that I was watched on the same evening a documentary called A Gray State, which was on Netflix. And you can still find it if you search around on the internet. And that is on the David Crowley case. And I'm sure some of you guys that are listening, if you've ever even looked at any of the interviews on my YouTube channel, will see that that is some of the first interview. It is the first interviews I did was with people who were looking into this case, and definitely don't believe what the official story is that was put out about David Crowley and his family. So this is definitely a case that I've been looking at for a lot of years, have and heard a lot of people speak about, and so I just figured that I would get somebody on that today to talk that I know has been looking into this case for a few years now, very deeply, and at the evidence in that. So I'm hoping, that if people that are listening have not looked into this case, definitely start looking into it. If you're into looking into these types of cases, very interesting, a lot of moving parts in it, and it will definitely, when you start looking into it, it just starts leading to more and more questions. At least it did for me. So, and this documentary that came out on A&E was supposed to, answer all these questions and prove that David did it. And I find that it did everything but that, and kind of make me have even more questions, and just didn't sit right with me during this documentary. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce my guest this week, Sophia Allen. How are you there, Sophia? Are you with me? Hello?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry.
Oh, there you go. Not a problem. Welcome to the show. Thank you for taking time to come and chat with me this evening.
Thank you for asking me to join you.
Oh, awesome. Well, I've interviewed you before for my YouTube channel. I know you're very passionate about this case, and you do a lot of research with a lot of other people that are doing a lot of research. As people know, Greg Fernandez Jr., who I've had on both of my shows, and we actually did talk about the Crowley case on one of my first shows. And I know there's Catherine Michelle that's diving. She has a YouTube channel. You and her are digging into a lot of things. And so I figured, because I saw this so-called documentary on last week, I watched it again. I wanted to see, because I haven't watched it for a long time, Sophia. So I want to see if how it would sit with me when I watched it again. And it actually left me with the same feeling I got when I watched it all the other times. And I probably watched it a total of 5 or 6 times now. And it left me with the same feeling that it just really did not sit well with me, because I didn't like the way they steered this documentary. And I really hope people will check this documentary out if you haven't, and because I like to hear what people think after they see it, and especially when they start looking into the case. And for me, this documentary did not answer any questions that I thought it would. It was totally not what I was expecting. And the ending really was jarring to me. I was talking about that before we went live. I don't understand the ending, what they were trying to kind of wrap it up really quickly and that. So I want maybe you can do this for everybody who hasn't heard of the David Crowley case. Can you give them a quick, just let people know what this case is about, and kind of give people a broad, kind of what it's all about and where people sit with it and stuff like that.
Sure, absolutely. David Crowley and his wife and 5-year-old daughter were found deceased in January 2015. Now, before they were found deceased, he was in the process of selling his documentary and, selling his movie, The Gray State. And you could find these trailers all on YouTube, which this is kind of like a end of days for the United States.
Right. New World Order takes over, martial law takes over, right?
The elites, the Illuminati, all of it jumbled together. And the trailers look amazing. But the movie was never completed. He has several scripts that we have been able to get a hold of, and they're located on on Greg Fernandez's website, which is called the Gray Stage WordPress.com.
Right.
And you could also find it on Facebook, which would be the Justice for David Crowley and Family. And it's a group. There's also a Facebook page, but we're more active in the group.
Right.
And we can direct you to the scripts. We can direct you to the documentary, which, by the way, the documentary is located on Discovery Plus.
Okay,
and
perfect.
you can watch it there. You can also watch it on, I believe it's BitChute for free. They have the documentary, and they also have the Gray Stage, The Rise. So,
right. Yes, that's interesting too. You can find that on YouTube if you dig.
yes,
You got to
if you
kind of
really
dig
dig.
and play with the words a little bit. In the search, you can actually pull it out. Right. I've got both versions of The Rise, the unfinished and then the finished one.
And The Rise is a really long documentary that David was working on, and he was supposed to release it for free for the world on January 1st, 2015, but it was never released.
Right.
Well, officially released.
Right.
And so David had flown to Hollywood in May, and then again in July, I believe. And July was where the contract was given to him by Mike's Entertainment. I believe it was Mike's Entertainment or something.
Yep, the Mike's.
And they were just going back and forth negotiating the contract up until his death. And there is some discussion, arguments even, in regards to whether or not David walked away from this contract. But the information that we have received from Apple Valley, especially the newest information, shows that David did not walk away from this contract. It was for $30 million. They wanted, instead of doing an actual movie, they wanted to do a limited time series, I think on FX.
Okay.
I think cool. It was either FX or AMC, whichever one had Sons of Anarchy. Because,
FX, yeah. You're right, FX, yeah.
Yes. Ah, good series, by the way.
I agree.
And they were, since that was ending, they were really feeling that they could fill that void with this type of series.
Mm-hmm.
And so David was excited about it. We have his journal where he discusses that he's excited about doing the series. And he wrote, I think, the premiere and the first episode, and then he sent it off. But as far as we know, it stops right there. We don't get anything else.
Right.
The journal actually ends either November 5th or November 7th.
Yep.
And but it really gives you a good insight into David's world. Some of the stuff that you'll see in the documentary is that there was marijuana left open. It was in like a Ziploc bag, and then they had like a grinder that had been left open on the dresser.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
Yeah, and honestly, there's a lot of banter back and forth in regards to this, because David's autopsy reports and Kamel's autopsy reports show that they didn't have drugs in their system.
Right. Yep.
So why was there marijuana on the dresser then?
Right.
Now,
That's the problem with this case, though, Sophia, is that as soon as you start diving into it, things right away don't start making sense. At least for me, they didn't. And I thought with this documentary that I was under the impression this was gonna like answer all the questions that people like you and I had. Like it was gonna kind of tie everything up, and it would be that aha moment where we were like, okay, now they've kind of made a case for it. And for me, it was anything but that. And just so people know, if they don't know anything about David Crowley, he was a veteran. So that's, I think people should know that. I think a lot of people that are listening probably have heard of the case because, as I said, I've had Greg on. We did cover 2 hours about it, and we talked a lot about it. And I've actually covered it, kind of touched on it in other conversations with people. So I'm hoping people do know a little bit about David Crowley. And if you haven't, please look into where Sophia said to go and check out the documentary and then start diving into it, because I know for you that even like when you saw the documentary, was that the first exposure you had to the case?
No, I had actually seen a couple articles like on Breitbart and Fox
Okay, right.
right after their bodies were discovered. And, I was kind of awake at that time in 2015. It wasn't really until 2016 and 17 that I really started waking up to what was really going on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, there was a lot of, okay, I'm going to say it. There was a lot of Clinton people that were kind of mysteriously ending up dead. There was also a lot of holistic doctors and practitioners that were ending up dead too in 2014 and 2015.
That's true.
Now, Kamel was a dietitian, and she had claimed to have healed her daughter's leaky gut and her autism.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And she went public with that with another person. She was posting about it publicly. And that was one of the things that these natural practitioners, they were trying to work with autistic patients and stuff. And all of a sudden they would just end up dead.
Yeah, I remember
lots
that.
of suicides and strange deaths.
Mm-hmm.
And so my first thought was, oh, there's another one. And, I forgot about it until the documentary came out. And I watched that documentary, and halfway through it, I knew I was being lied to. And that was the first time I had ever felt that way in a documentary. It leaves you with this feeling, and you feel yucky about it.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like you are being lied to and led down this path that, they're telling you what to believe.
Yep.
And they're not shy about it. And you can't, basically, at the end, I was just like, oh, I got to look this group up.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was the same way when I saw that documentary. That's what I was trying to explain. It's a weird feeling that you get, at least for me and you, when you watch it. And it's a hard thing to explain. And it just leaves you with this really sick feeling at the end of it.
Yeah.
Like, and I was just like, and then I've watched it many times, as I said earlier, I've watched it many times because I'm like, okay, and then I'll go back to it after a few months. I'll be like, okay, I got, a little time to kill. I'm going to watch it again. Maybe I missed something. And then they definitely are steering you down a path they want you to believe. It's not like they're trying to show a couple different sides or even show really the evidence. They're kind of they're skimming across things, not telling people you certain things, and then leading you down this path that is really like disturbing the way that they kind of covered it. I don't know how they looked at this documentary and thought, oh yeah, this is going to solve it. Like this is going to show them. I don't know how they thought that.
That's what they told everybody. They even wrote it like in their posts and comments to people asking questions. And they're like, don't worry, this documentary will answer all your questions and everything. They were very secure in that. And I'm just like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
Watch
definitely
it in small. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Watch it in small increments because it's overwhelming to your senses.
Yeah. Yeah, the ending's still jarring to me, as I was saying
Hmm.
earlier too. That ending just, and then you were kind of telling me off air like the ending that they wanted to go to, and then the fact that Camel's family was supposed to be in this documentary, and then at the last minute they saw the way the documentary was going, and then said they didn't want to be part of it. I think is very telling. I think that they were
Correct.
kind of, I to me that is, it just is. Like if this was a what they thought, or they thought was leading people in the right direction, or explained anything, you would think that they would want to be a part, get their say, and let people know, and have their say. But the ask the people that are doing this documentary to pull all of their parts out of it, and then they kind, and you could tell the ending. I think that's probably what you were saying. Like they had this way they wanted to end it, and then at the last minute, their parts, they wanted to no part of it, so they had to rush this ending. And that's what I feel like for the ending. That's a great way to put it. It was rushed. Like they were all
Hmm.
sudden like we gotta finish, we gotta end this movie somehow. Well, let's slap a dog at the end of it, and some happy music. That'll make people feel better. That's how I felt when I see it
And
at the end.
let me explain a little bit about the ending because uh, when David's okay, the family that is in this documentary is the father and the brother, and then they have friends,
Hmm.
supposed friends,
Good
all that had
friends.
worked.
Good
Yeah,
friends.
totally good friends. Such good friends that David was so sick of them, and he writes about it in his journal.
Yep.
But so they're all saying that David had PTSD and he snapped at the end and went crazy because the script took him to a deep, dark place.
Hmm.
And you read the last script that he wrote, which was the 2014 script, and it's not deep and dark that they're trying to sell you in
Yep.
this documentary.
It's nothing like the trailer. Like that's the one
Yeah.
thing because I read both script. I've read everything I get my hands on. So I have the scripts, the journal. I've looked at all. I have all, like it's so much stuff for this case. I didn't realize it
Hmm.
when I started looking into the evidence, and actually getting accumulating the evidence. And I like having physical copies because I like to be able to go outside and read, or take it with me if I want to look through stuff. So I didn't realize how much printing I would be doing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
especially the scripts. But that's the one thing that I found really shocking was the trailer that you would see on YouTube is nothing like the final script. That's for sure.
Correct.
So,
It's quite different,
yep,
and I think a lot of his supporters would have been a little upset about that.
yep.
But they also were saying that he had PTSD from the military,
Hmm.
and this man was going to the gun range and doing tactical exercises and uh, reenacting
Yep.
stuff. Uh, they had groups of people that were doing these tactical exercises, and then he's writing this movie that has warlike simulations, and he's filming it and everything.
Yep.
If this man had the PTSD that would cause him to snap and kill his family because of this script, I don't think he would have been able to get as far as he did.
Right.
And he's been writing it since, I think, 2010,
Yeah.
2011. So for quite a few years, he was writing it.
And then yeah, if
And
you do see the trailer, he was there. It was pretty graphic what there is in that trailer.
oh,
And
yes.
I've also seen on YouTube some interviews that he did, like, and some scenes that he was kind of giving people updates and showing like clips that he was shooting and stuff like that, and like different scenes that he was kind of, and like it was like you said, it was very graphic. Like I just don't, and he was never diagnosed with PTSD, correct? Like there's never been anyone that's diagnosed him in medical field that said he had it.
As far as we are aware, he was never diagnosed
Right.
or even saw anybody for it.
Hmm. You're right. I haven't seen
And
anything either.
yeah, as far as we're aware, I think if he was, the police would have written that in their police reports, but they
Hmm.
did not.
Right. Yeah. So
The one
definitely.
thing, yeah.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
No, go
The
ahead.
one thing that they did right was that he um, was not sleeping and that he. No, that was the fake document. By the way, folks, make sure that you have the real document.
Yeah, there's a fake one floating around.
Yes, somebody decided to write up a fake one to convince other people that he was guilty. So
Yeah.
that's not suspicious at all.
Well, that's the thing about this case is that when you start looking into it, I thought when I first started looking into it, I was like, okay, when I start diving into the actual police reports and the medical reports, and I look at everything, the journal, I want to get anything I could get on the case, I wanted to get it and look into it. And then as I started reading the medical reports and the police reports, I started getting, that's where all my questions started coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like right from the start, you start seeing like a lot of things that make, I think any normal person would question, why did they not do certain things? Why did they do certain things? And I just want to apologize to the people listening. I mean, to try to have me and Sophia cover this in an hour, it's such a big case. You have to start kind of start at the beginning and do your own research and watch, anything you can on it and try, and then go to Greg's site, and all the information's there. Everything is very transparent on there. Everything that you can find, that they can find at least, that's been released or they've got, is on that site. And I'll get Sophie to let people know at the end again where to go, and you can find everything you need and to do your own, start diving into it yourself. And I noticed right from the start that I was starting to get more. That's where all my questions started really coming from, was because they were doing certain things that didn't make sense and not doing certain things that didn't make sense. It's a weird case when you dive into it.
Yes, it is. And that's why a lot of people think that it's a false flag.
Right.
And I mean, we've even had some people question whether or not they're alive or dead. I mean, Lord knows I've questioned it. And it's only because things don't add up. I've looked at other cases where the police reports follow along with the crime scene photos. Everything makes sense. And you read these police reports and you're confused.
Oh, that's for sure.
And you look at the photos and you're like, wait a minute, these photos aren't lining up with what's written down or the graphics that they draw, the diagrams. And so that's where a lot of questions come in, because there's so many discrepancies.
Right.
And then you have the BCA, which is the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, basically the ones that come in, the crime scene team.
Mm-hmm.
They come in, and as they're taking photos, they're moving the evidence around. And
which is a big no-no.
Yeah. And they've moved the bodies before the ME even gets there. And I'm like, wait a minute. Everything that I've learned and I've been reading about in crime scene investigations and stuff like that says you don't touch the bodies.
Yep.
You don't move the evidence, not until the detectives are there, not until the ME is there. There's certain things that you just do not do.
Yeah.
And they're doing it.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of people were through that scene before they should have been allowed to go even in there. I think a lot
Absolutely.
And things were being moved, and that's just, you can tell that by the photos. That's not just us saying it. And we should let people know that there was a dog there too, their dog Paleo.
Yes.
And he gets blamed for everything. This dog has done everything. I'm surprised that they haven't kind of linked him pulling the trigger somehow, because I mean, I've heard, and I've just had people say they blame everything on the dog. And as well as anyone that might have watched any of my interviews, I have talked to a vet because I wanted to get just a vet's opinion. I didn't tell him anything really about the case. I told him about the conditions of the bodies and anything that had to do with the dog. And I wanted to find out just if a dog the size of Paleo, which was I called him a medium-sized dog. I wouldn't call him small or big. He was kind of medium, but I've had people argue with me on that one too. But I'm only going by what I saw in pictures. I can't really get I don't know his big, exact size. So I said medium. And the vet kind of was leaning towards the dog could do a lot of what I said, the condition of the bodies. But there's a lot riding on this dog apparently. because there's not a lot of blood. To me, there's never been enough blood there. And I've had people, and all this guys that are listening, this has all been argued. And you're going to have people tell you that there's enough blood there. All of these points that I'm making and Sophia making are argued usually. Some people don't agree with this, but a lot of people do agree with what we're seeing too. And I have to be just honest that I don't see enough blood there for one thing, and I don't see. There's a lot I don't see, and then what I do see is a lot of staging. It's just crazy the amount. If David did do this, the amount of work that he put into staging all of this, and then I don't understand why he would do the staging that he did. So I mean, what do you think? Like, where are you sitting with it? I just have so many questions at this point, and I just can't let the dog take the accountability for everything. I totally agree. Like, and it gets graphic, but we can talk about that here. That the conditions on the bodies. There is Kamel's hands were missing. David's right hand was missing. Ranya's left arm. Correct me if I'm wrong. It might have been what arm was Ranya's was missing? Left or right?
I think it was the right arm.
I think so too. That's where I'm leaning to. Sorry, guys. It's just a lot to remember.
Yeah.
And then also their Kamel. Yeah, and then a couple of heads were missing. So that's why I went to the vet and asked him if a dog could do this type of damage. He seemed to think that he could. And so I mean, where are you sitting with this? Because I did talk to the vet, and he kind of like he said it could be done, and I'm just going by what he said. So don't chew my head off. I just went to the vet and asked him if a dog that size could do that type of damage. And I even asked him about the blood, because I said there wasn't enough blood there, and he seemed to think that the dog could have maybe cleaned up a lot of the blood. But I have trouble with even what he said, just because I've seen the photos. So where you sit with all this?
Well, let's discuss the blood first.
Or the lack of it.
Yeah, the lack of it. You will see blood in some of the crime scene photos, and that is on the wall, several of the walls. And you'll see it on the wooden floors. But the only thing that you see on the carpet is decomp. And the bodies were moved. You can tell that they were, because you see the decomp. And then, well, anyway, we don't make that picture public. But, but what you're seeing on the floors and the walls is medium velocity blood. Now, there's no mention of them being beaten or stabbed in the police reports or the autopsies. The only thing that was mentioned is that there was 4 gunshot wounds, and that's it. So there should be high velocity blood spatter, and that's where there's a lack of, is there's no high velocity gun spatter whatsoever in that crime scene. And feel free to look at those crime scene photos and then Google what medium velocity is compared to high velocity. You're even going to see passive blood drops in the kitchen and mixed along with the blood, the medium velocity blood spatter. It's the weirdest crime scene ever. So, yeah.
I agree.
And then with the dog is blamed for eating the bodies. And they were saying that he was starving. But right there in 2 of the crime scene photos, you see a bag and a half, a huge bag and a half of dog food sitting right there on the floor, easy access. He doesn't destroy these bags to get to them to eat. And, they're never mentioned.
Yeah, they're never mentioned. He didn't touch them. And I found that weird. For sure. And I asked the vet about it. I'm being honest. I did ask him, and he was kind of saying that he would be more drawn to the bodies because of the scent of blood. And so he tried to, and if you can, like I said, you can go to Catherine Michelle. She asked me, I did an interview with her. She asked me about we talked about what the vet told me, and I'm just reporting what the vet, I recorded the interview, and then I wrote down what he told me. So, but I still think, I even told the vet that I still think he would have tried to get to the food. That's what I think. And he, as you said, he's responsible for a lot people are blaming him for.
Yeah, a lot. And so
it's strange.
I did speak with a vet back at the end of December.
And what did they say for you?
For me, my vet, I kind of approached it a little differently than you did, only because I was just trying to feel my way to see where they were.
Right.
And I asked about the raw diet because that is what some people are claiming, that the raw diet, dogs don't need to drink as much water and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're considering paleo eating bodies as the raw diet, which I'm sorry, that's just not okay.
Right.
But I had asked about that because I have a dog. And she was like, oh, no, please do not put your dog on this. Because she's had people bring in their dogs where they, home pets, household domesticated dogs,
right,
do not have the enzymes in their stomachs to break down foodborne illnesses like wild animals do and wild dogs. And so they could sit there and eat an animal's carcass for days on end and not get sick. Whereas a regular dog that's been domesticated and is being fed dry food or canned food will get sick. And our dog did get sick in January from bones. Because I just assumed that he could eat these bones for weeks on end.
Yeah,
and
he's a dog. He can eat bone.
Yeah,
then
he got a foodborne illness from it. And
yeah, I see. I asked my vet that too because I said, like, would there be bone if he ate all? Like, this is a lot of bone this dog had to eat supposedly in 3 weeks. And if people didn't know, this is there's even discussion about how long the bodies were there. People are arguing. Some people think longer, some people shorter. But I told the vet 3 weeks, and I said, like, and then when you know how much they're blaming that he ate all the bodies, it's a lot of bone. And the first thing my vet asked was, well, they must have tested the dog feces because there would definitely be bone in the feces if he's eating that much bone. And I said, no, they never tested it. He did find that weird because he said, why would they not test it just to confirm it? Like, why leave that open? Like, that's a big part of the case. He's responsible for supposedly eating off of all of these bodies. Like, test the feces, there's bone in it, it matches the DNA of whoever, and they can do this. The vet said they can test it, lock down the DNA of whose bone he was eating on, or if it was all three, and they never tested that. I find that very strange.
And the search warrants that they got for that very first day did cover that. They could have collected the feces at the crime scene and had that tested, and they didn't.
Well, a lot of things weren't tested. That's another thing that bothers me. Is that certain, like, it's, and I do know from doing other research that they do take more samples than they usually test, but and like they always have extra that they're like, okay, we didn't test everything, but I think that's normally because they got so much evidence already with what they tested. There's no really point to test all of it because they've already got enough with what they've done. But with this case, which I find weird, is there is some test that they're doing where there's an unknown DNA source, and they never look into that. Can you explain that a little bit?
Oh, yes.
Like, it's crazy, guys. Yeah, it's crazy when you start diving into it.
Yeah. For instance, like Ranya's bullet that was found 2 days later, I believe.
Right. And then a bullet 30 days later in the seal. Yeah, we should let people know that there was 2 bullets that were found after they first went through. So I'll let you explain that after we go through. Sorry, I'm just kind of jumping ahead, but yes, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, that was rolled out of the carpet when the crime scene cleaners were there. And so when that was tested, only Ranya's blood showed up as one of the main contributors. But then they had 2 to 3 unknown DNA sources that also came through. But David and Kamel were ruled out.
That's
And yeah, that's interesting.
yep.
Also, if you look through the DNA reports, which are located in the group, or they are also on Greg's website, David's cell phone, only Kamel's blood was on that cell phone, and only her DNA showed up, whereas it's David's cell phone. His DNA should be all over that.
Right. You would think.
So,
I mean, yeah, if they tested my phone right now, my phone would have my DNA all over it.
correct.
Like it's always in my hand. I'm always working, like using it, looking things. Like I'm always on my phone, so my DNA should be all over it. And then another thing that bothered me was the gun. There was not enough prints on the gun for of him. Like that's another. Let people know about the gun. That is strange.
The gun. Okay, so the gun on the outside, it doesn't have his DNA or fingerprints, but the magazine that is on the inside has his blood, number one, and it has several fingerprints, but they were inconclusive to David's because they're pretty, they're layered,
Right.
and so, but the only injury to David was the gunshot wound, supposedly, that killed him at the end. So
And how did the blood?
his,
How did it get on the clip? It doesn't make sense. I even talked to a gunsmith because my friend's a gunsmith, and I told him how the blood was on. There was some blood on the clip, and he's like, that makes no sense. Like
correct.
if he shot himself, it's not going to get on the clip. He's like, it doesn't. It just wouldn't on the outside of the clip. It doesn't work that way. So he
Correct.
found that really strange. And then I'm sorry, I'm kind of jumping quickly ahead, Sophia, only because we have an hour. I mean,
Of course.
I could sit and talk to you for 3 hours about this and let people know. I'm hoping that people are listening have actually looked into this case, or we're going to spark them enough their interest, because we do need new people looking into this and looking at the evidence and, you know, adding what they think, because I think the more people that are trying to show that David didn't do this is what is going to help get this case maybe reopened and move along. The things that bother me, Sophia, that I've always said about this case are the bullet there was a bullet found in the floor. And then there was a bullet found 30 days later in the ceiling that apparently all the crime investigators, all the police, everybody that went over, they go over a crime scene like that with a fine-tooth comb. They have to. That's their job. And they missed a bullet in the ceiling. Those two bullets have always bothered me.
And it wasn't just the police that missed it, but the crime scene cleaners too,
right?
That were there 2 days later.
Yep.
It wasn't reported until a month after the bodies were found.
Yep.
And it's just
happened to be the one that killed David. Strictly
except
coincidence.
It didn't have his blood.
Except it didn't have his blood on it, right? And a lot of people are arguing that it still had his DNA on it, and that's another debate I've heard people have, that it did have his DNA on it, and and I'm just like, okay, but it doesn't say blood DNA.
Yeah, because DNA is much more than blood.
Exactly. No hair on it. There was no, and I asked my friend who's a gunsmith, and I've said this in other interviews, that he was wondering if there was hair matted in with it, because he said like they would definitely, that bullet would grab something, like it would grab stuff when it goes through the skull, which is graphic, but it's true. It would be grabbing people. Yeah, it's hollow point. It mushrooms out, it grabs stuff, and it collects it. And I said no, there was nothing like that. No hair, no tissue, nothing. It was just, and he's like, that's like me and my friend who he knew nothing about the case. I was just asking, I asked people if they know about a certain part, like the vet or a gunsmith or something. I asked them parts pertaining to it just to get their opinion, and I let them know what the evidence is, and he found that very strange that there was nothing there.
Yeah, they had done a presumptive test on it, and it showed no blood on it whatsoever. And their description of this bullet was pretty clean. The only thing that they found on it was white plaster from when it went through the ceiling and into the attic. So that's from the drywall.
Wow. Yeah, that bullet bothers me. It really does. I know a lot of people, they seem to think, oh, they maybe just missed it. And I'm like, I don't buy that. I just don't.
Yeah, I don't buy it either, honestly. I think that it was added to the crime scene afterwards. And hear me out here, folks, because a lot of people are like, well, how did they steal the gun from the storage facility that the police had put it in? They didn't need to steal it because they didn't match that bullet up to the gun. They matched that bullet up to a bullet fragment that was found at the crime scene. And that bullet fragment poorly matched up to the gun.
Mhm.
They couldn't get a decent match. And so they never said that David's bullet, which is item 57, matched to item 1, which was the gun.
Right.
And that's what people don't seem to understand who want to argue this fact with us.
Right. That's what I was saying
And
earlier. Like there, a lot of people argue all the points we're making, and I think asking questions about stuff is great if it's for the right reasons and you're trying to have an honest discussion about it. But
mhm,
there's points where that it's just, I mean, there's a lot that doesn't make sense, and all the questions I got, as I've told you, Sophia, is when I did start reading the police report and the medicals, all the stuff I was starting to read, I was keeping a list of questions, and I had more questions than I ever did watching the documentary, just by what they did and didn't do for this crime scene. Like, because let's checking the time here. I know that we only got, so we got about another 10 minutes. So let's kind of bump ahead here, and then
mhm.
what I'll do is we'll get everybody on and have a longer show. Maybe I'll get you on a Monday where we have a couple hours, because I feel like we are jumping ahead. But I'm trying to go in from the angle that people that have looked into this case or at least heard of it, listened to my show, heard it, or some of my interviews, they kind of got a grasping of it. Have you guys, I know you guys are still looking into this, that you and Catherine
Absolutely.
are definitely digging into it. You guys are doing a lot of good work on doing doing videos and stuff on Catherine's channel on YouTube. So are you guys uncovering anything new or strange things
Yes,
recently that you can
yes.
talk about or that you want to talk about?
Uh,
Or do you want to wait? That's cool too.
we have to wait only because these presentations have been made already, and uh, there's quite a few bombshells.
Oh, perfect.
And
And so they'll be on Catherine Michelle's YouTube channel
yes, and
eventually.
then Greg burns them, and or whatever he does, he copies them and he'll play them on his channel too.
Okay,
So that is
perfect.
the Gray Stage uh, on YouTube. And
Yep,
then Catherine is Catherine Michelle with one L,
yep.
and she's on YouTube also. And we have quite a few videos all together. And feel free to check us out.
Oh, for sure. And apparently some new stuff that you guys are going to be presenting, which is very cool. That
Yes,
because you guys are like, you guys, like you, Greg, and Catherine, you guys have really dug deep into this case. Like, especially you, I know you've put a lot of work into going over everything and diving really deep into it. And I think that that's what's needed in this case. To be honest, I think there's so much that's not answered, and I just feel that way, and I try to stay in the middle. I've said that from day one. Everybody that listens to me knows that I say that I try to stay, and I do want to hear evidence for both sides. Like I don't, but I'm still way leaning that he didn't do it, just because of all the questions I have for that don't make any sense. And when I look at all the evidence and you start digging into the photos and the reports, as you were saying, they just, nothing adds up like it should. And so I just can't see what they're spinning as being the truth. I don't see it.
yeah.
I just don't think
And
he did. I don't think he did it. I don't see anything that leads me to believe he did it. And you can't just say he snapped one day. You can't. There has to be some proof for that. You can't just say it.
yeah, I agree. And some people are very happy to blame an innocent man, but
Right.
I, you know, like I said, I have questioned whether or not they are dead because of so many things that were done and not done with this case.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, the photos that I've seen of the bodies shows that there are 3 bodies that were in
Yep.
that living room. So who did the staging? Who left those bodies there? And why do all of this? I mean, was this some type of supposed to a documentary that was supposed to be for red flag laws or gun grabbing or what? Because he's a veteran.
Hmm.
He
Right.
served in Afghanistan and Iraq. He's a filmmaker. He was a libertarian. He was married to an individual who came over from Pakistan and was Pakistani.
Hmm.
I mean, there's so many things that they could have done, red flags about, for gun laws.
Right.
This documentary was created in 2016, right when the 2020 election was going on. And if many people remember, Hillary Clinton wasn't supposed to lose.
Hmm. You're right.
And I really believe she would have continued to do what Barack Obama was doing, and that was uh, gun control and gun grabbing. Now, I don't even own a gun.
Okay.
So I'm not a fanatic here. I'm just saying this is what was going on. And so maybe this was created to get that ball rolling because it came out at the end of December. The election was that November and everything. So that was right before the swearing in January, right before Congress and the Senate got their new individuals into office and sworn in. So who knows what they had on the docket if Hillary Clinton had won.
Hmm.
I know that when Biden was sworn in and all the new Congress members and Senate members that were sworn in came in January, they had between 15 and 21 bills for gun controls.
Oh yeah, that's an agenda they've been after for a while.
Yep.
For sure, like that. And if anyone's being honest, you can see it that's what they're trying to do. They definitely are trying to disarm
America.
America. Yeah, definitely. And I know they're doing it where I live in Canada. Like you can get guns here, but they don't make it easy. That's for sure. Like, and it's
Yeah.
definitely, and you can't get a lot of the guns that you guys the stuff you guys can get in the U.S. We can't get here at all. Like, we just can't. And if you even want a gun in Canada, you've got to. They make it expensive now, and they make it hard, time consuming because a way of deterring people, right? So I agree, and it's a strange case, guys. I'm really I wish, like as Sophia said, there's so many unanswered questions, and when you start, at least for me, when I started looking and diving into the evidence and looking through all the reports and even the journal and getting an idea of where David's head was at, you start getting this really weird thing where I don't understand like why they didn't test certain things and why they overlook certain things that I think were very important. Like another thing that bothers me, Sophie, is the blood that was on the edge of the recliner, like that circular. There's a big blood stain there that was never tested. And
Correct.
I'm thinking, and there was nobody around it. I'm like, okay, like there was nothing there that would cause that directly, but it was there. Why wasn't it tested to find out who it was? Why wasn't there certain blood drops tested that were in other rooms? I just don't understand why they didn't test these things. It's strange to me. It really is.
They took almost 50 samples from that crime scene and only tested 16, I believe.
Wow, that's okay.
Yeah, 16.
Yeah, that doesn't. Yeah, and some of the things you think I would have tested the recliner for sure, and
Yes.
I would have been like, okay, it's something like why did what is going on here? And for me, another big thing too is the lack of blood, as you talk about a lot. Catherine talks about too a lot. The lack of blood and blood, high velocity blood splatter too. I would think that just how clean the couch is and stuff. It's like, and I said that to my vet too. I said, okay, if this dog is eating these bodies, like you say, he's going to get blood all over him. Obviously, if he's walking through blood, he's going to have blood all over his paws. It's going to be tramped all over the house. I know what a dog can do when they go outside in rainy weather with a bit of mud, and they come in and they run around my house. There's mud everywhere. Like,
Oh yeah.
it's on the couch, and if they jump on it, it's everywhere. And there's not, you don't see that there. So
Yeah, there's no
weird.
bloody paw prints at all.
None.
And in regards to the couch in the living room, Camilla's body was laying right there by the couch in the corner of the right hand corner. And there's no blood.
Mhm.
So those girls did not, actually, none of them died on that carpet
Right.
because
Well, some people are
there's
thinking no blood, right?
blood
And a lot of people are saying that they might not have even been murdered
in
there
the house.
in the
Yeah.
house, and they were brought in. I can kind of argue that one too. My argument with that would be I don't know how you could get away with bringing them in without being noticed.
Mhm.
But if I'm being honest, I mean, my neighbors could be doing things in the middle of the night where I live, and I would never know. I mean, how much do
Yeah.
you really sit there and stare at your neighbor's house? Like, I mean, if you're being honest, I wouldn't know if my neighbors were bringing things in at 3 a.m. To be honest, I don't watch. So
We have a
Yeah, but-
camera at our front door, but if they came in through the garage, I would never even know.
yeah,
And to be fair, we need to let the listeners know that the backslider was cracked open
little
about
bit,
a
right?
fourth of an inch. It was not locked, it was open. And so somebody could have been coming in and out at any time,
right.
and nobody would have known.
And some people will say that, well, no, there's no evidence of a break and enter. And I like the way you say, well, there doesn't need to be evidence of a break and enter if the door is open.
Correct.
Or if they got
Correct.
let in. If somebody they knew, if they let them in, of course there wouldn't be any sign of a break and enter. And I think that door ajar at that patio door, that's weird to me. That's another thing that's really strange that I've always wondered.
Yeah, it's a huge red flag.
Yeah, and there's so many in this, guys. I mean, like I said, my hour's winding down, guys. I hope you guys can definitely take the time, check out the movie A Gray State. And where was that, Sophia, that they can watch it again?
They can watch it on Discovery Plus, or there's a website called BitChute,
Okay.
and that one is free, but you have to search for it. And a lot of the time, when you're searching Gray State: The Rise, which is the documentary that David was working on, shows up.
Great. Okay, so
And then
right.
we have Greg's website, which is called The Gray Stage, and that is at thegraystage.wordpress.com.
Okay.
You can get his book. You can download his book for free there. We have all the podcasts on there and all the documents.
Perfect. And then you can also, don't forget, you can go on YouTube, find Greg, the Gray Stage on YouTube for Greg's videos. And then there's also Catherine Michelle with one L for Michelle.
Mhm.
And she's got tons going on there of going through the evidence. And then you're even doing some work with her now where you guys are starting to do some presentations showing different things. So, yeah, that's amazing. I want to thank you, Sophia. I wish I had more time to talk, and because it's such an interesting case, and I hope people actually do take the time to look into it, because I think you're going to see, like, we're kind of where we are, more questions than answers. At least for me, there definitely was. So,
Well,
definitely.
thank you, Rick,
You're
inviting
very
me
welcome.
on.
Oh, you're very welcome, Sophia. You're welcome back anytime. Thank you guys for listening, and I will definitely see you guys back Monday. Have a great weekend, and stay safe, guys. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.
Hey, everybody.
Good show there, Rick and Sophia. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Yep. Always great to get Sophia on anytime you can. So go through some more replays for a little while here next. And yes, again, make sure you catch Rick, Crypt Rick, freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio, Monday night. Oh, that was today. That's right. It's all a blur at this point. God bless you all. And yeah, I may be back here. We may be jumping over to Southern Truth. We may try to hijack their channel again. You never know. You never know. God bless you all. Thank you for joining. I really appreciate everybody watching that. Just put a few more things here in the background. This may be 1 or 2 parts here. I'm just, gonna run through some of this stuff here. We'll see how far we get, and we're gonna take a look at our good buddy Tom Wyden, Fox 9 News reporter, and this report that he put out in early 2016. January 11th, 2016 looks like when this broadcast first. So we'll go ahead and do a little screen share here. And let's go ahead and we'll take a listen and watch. Not sure how well my audio is going to come out, so I'm actually going to run a little test here before we get there. I do not have my regular audio today. Apologize for that. Such is life, right? I've been wanting to look at some of Tom Wyden stuff for me. Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, audio's pretty bad here. So we'll see. Let's see how far I get. May have to redo this one later on as well. Let me go and see if I can adjust this mic setting. Microphone. My speed is fine. And speech recognition. Just want the microphone. Okay, I guess. Just have permissions there. All right. Well, we'll just make do with the best that we can do here with the short amount of time we have. Such is life, all right? It sure is. Okay, let's see. It's not okay. Input. Let's see if this changes anything here. All right, testing 1 2 3. Test 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. A little better. All right, here we go. Enough of that. Let's look at Tom Wyden and his news report here. This should be fun. All right, let me start and play this here. Full screen. Gotta love StreamYard here. Okay, let's go.
New and disturbing details we've never heard before. Tom Lydon of the Fox 9 investigators has been given unprecedented access, and he's here to tell us what he's learned. And Tom, some of this will be very difficult.
Some of it will be, but I think you're going to see that it's important at this point to really get all the facts out on the table. I think that's the most important thing here. For the last year, this case has become the subject of much speculation and plenty of theories on the internet, most of it completely wrong. The reality is the truth of what happened.
Oh yeah, that's pretty bad too. Yeah, definitely having some audio issues there. So let's see, can I change the speakers? I may need to actually just plug in. Oh, live tests. This is what happens, right? Okay. Okay, there we go. Let's try this again. You have to hear it online again, guys. All right, January 11th, 2016.
And he's here to tell us what he's learned. And Tom, some of this will be very difficult to hear.
Some of it will be, but I think you're going to see that it's important at this point to really get all the facts out on the table. I think that's the most important thing here. For the last year, this case has become the subject of much speculation and plenty of theories on the internet, most of it completely wrong. The reality is the truth of what happened to David Crowley.
So there it is. We got to get all the facts out, right? It's all about the facts right there. So he wants to put all of that out. Guess how many facts are in this news report that come out? I bet you can guess how many are and how many aren't. All right. This guy's too much, man. So, but it's just interesting that he makes sure to put that out there for people. Okay. So let's continue on.
Crowley and his family is stranger and sadder than anyone imagined.
Yeah, it's stranger and sadder.
To the right of the RPC.
Yeah, it's stranger and sadder because this guy could not get some of these simple basic things right. Number one, what proves David Crowley guilty? Couldn't even get that right. So that's the strangest and saddest thing here so far.
Dead bodies inside the house, dog inside, sees a gun in the house on the floor.
To look at the three of them through the Instagram filter of life, it's hard to imagine how it all went so wrong. David Crowley, a talented, promising young filmmaker, his smart and beautiful wife, Kamel, a dietitian, and their adorable 5-year-old daughter, Rania, living on a quiet street in Apple Valley, in a home that contained their many dreams and one horrific nightmare.
This is the ideal family, seemingly, and everything went terribly wrong.
My impression is it was very intense in the early days.
Everything went terribly wrong. And you can see in this news report here, 14 minutes, they're never able to prove what they believe went terribly wrong. They're never able to prove any of that. They're never able to tie this crime to David Crowley. Isn't that interesting?
Of this investigation.
Apple Valley police recently closed their exhaustive year-long investigation, and for the first time are sharing their findings with the Fox 9 investigators.
The Fox 9 investigators.
As you sit here today, a year later, do you have an idea of what those final moments looked like?
It was horrifying. You have a tragic loss of an entire family. It looks like David snapped and took the lives of his wife and daughter.
He says it's horrifying when being asked what it was like in those last days. And yet he doesn't give any indication, any evidence of showing what it was like in those last days. That's pretty horrifying to me.
And then ultimately himself. And it was a very sad scene, during the holidays, a beautiful family, and just tragically lost.
And from the start,
beautiful family, just tragically lost. But again, not giving you any of those quote unquote facts that Tom Lydon says that we have, or that is most important. He admits that it's most important to get the facts. We all would agree on that. I sure would hope so, right? Unless you're hiding something about this case, you would definitely want to agree on that. unless you really hate David and you just want to believe that he's this murderer, this gruesome killer. Otherwise, you would definitely want the facts, and you would want to make sure that we get those. We don't get those here. Spoiler alert. We don't get those here.
The case wrapped in suspicion and mystery.
Here's the red flags.
With paranoid theories all over the internet.
Guys out here going after the truth get knocked off.
That the Crowleys were murdered as some kind of government conspiracy.
Isn't it a paranoid theory to say that this guy snapped? That he killed his family? Wouldn't that be a paranoid theory? That's what I would say it is. And who do you blame for that paranoid theory? The police? But they only want to look at one side of it. They want to look at what they think, the paranoid theory. Wouldn't it be paranoid? Wouldn't it be presumptuous? Wouldn't it be wrong to accuse somebody without some quote-unquote facts, some evidence?
Did the government want to silence him and his film?
All because of a personal...
These are like, they only give you two sides that you can join in on. They either say David snapped or the government did it. That's it. That's all they're giving you. They're playing with your mind. They're treating you like little children, and they're hoping that you will just go away. Stop paying attention to this. Forget about David Crowley. Tuck your tail and run. And you know what? Unfortunately, a lot of people did that. But it ain't going to happen here.
Film project David Crowley had worked on obsessively for years, called Gray State.
They always, and that's the other thing, these key words, obsessively. He was working on this obsessively. He was working on other things too. And he wasn't the only one who was working on this. So any obsession, you can't just give all of that credit to just David, right? There's other people working on this stuff too. How come they don't get accused of the obsessive aspect of this, right? It's just David. He's the only one who's obsessed, even though you have all these other people who want to take credit, who won't be saying, I was there, we were part of it, etc., etc. But David is the only one obsessing over it. Really interesting thinking here. But those key words, and we're going to hear a lot of that throughout this horrible news report, sloppy-mentary report. Give you the worst.
This is a concept trailer for Gray State, which imagines the U.S. government taking away all our liberties. FEMA turning into a militarized, occupying police force.
In short, the Gray State is the culminating manifestation of the darkest trends our negligence and malignancy have to offer.
Because I think at the tail end of it, he was living the Gray State.
Danny Mason was a co-producer on Gray State.
It almost embodied him, almost to the extent of where it's would dictate a lot of his thoughts and his ideas and his, I guess, outlook in reality.
Investigators spent months sifting through 20 terabytes of video. David Crowley.
Guess what they found? Sifting through all of those terabytes of video of everything. Guess what they found to help prove David Crowley guilty? Nothing.
He had kept on more than a dozen hard drives, looking for clues.
How much of this do you think had to do with the film?
I think a great deal. From all
I think a great deal, meaning we don't know anything. We think this, we think that, but what do we know? Nothing. That is such a key phrase here, such a key part of this. It's just fascinating how crazy this is.
He was consumed with producing this film, and
again, we're going back to the obsession, the consume. Danny Mason is saying it. All these people got their ducks lined in a row, all lined up. The same story, the same thing, the same phrase. I want you to look at this guy's face here for a minute here. I'll be right back, folks. continue on.
Yeah, it's a dark topic. You're talking about conspiracy theories and potentially the fall of society. And if you're focusing on that day in and day out, and those are materials you're working with, and you're filming exclusively on that topic, that can take you to a very bad place.
That's the thing. It can take you to a very bad place, but there's no evidence showing that it took David to a very bad place. This was taking David to other places. This was David getting his foot in the door, moving forward, planning for other projects, using this as a stepping stone to get in to the Hollywood world. He hadn't made it into Hollywood yet.
Do you think he literally went down the rabbit hole of these conspiracy theories and just couldn't separate himself from it?
I believe so.
And how does that equate to murder? How does any of that equate to murder? There has to be some evidence. They have to be able to provide some facts here. That is their job. I think so. We think. We believe. It's never what they know. It's never what they know, and it's never what they can prove, because they can't prove anything. This report pretty much lays it all out. It pretty much lays out the foundation for Eric Nelson's sloppymentary, A Gray State. It's all connected. Alec Wilkinson's news report, Death of a Dystopian. These three projects are all tied in. They're all related. They were all being made at the same time. They were all being made for the same purpose. And they all had the same message. That's coordination.
In the summer of 2014, Crowley traveled to Hollywood to meet with producers interested in Gray State. But by fall, the deal had fizzled, and the couple began withdrawing from friends and family. Kamel had told her family,
"This is not true." Now, we only know this because Dan Hinnon spoke with Mike Boggio of Michael Entertainment Group. We know the deal did not, quote unquote, falter. There was no faltering of a deal. The deal was there. The deal was in the works. But the deal only died because David died. They don't tell you that. And they know this stuff. I know they know this. If we know it, they know it. But they hide it. They're twisting it. They're not being honest to their viewers. And that's a big problem. Because it shouldn't be about them trying to prove David Crowley guilty in the court of public opinion. If they could, they would have. And they tried, but they failed. And they're going to keep failing. The truth is not on their side. Because the truth is simple, and the truth does not change. In order to say that it's true David Crowley killed his family and killed himself, you have to present some facts. And if you can't, then don't be frustrated. Don't be mad at the people that call you out on it. Be mad at yourself for believing something as stupid as that. That's who you need to be mad at. And what else could you be tricked on? If you're so easily tricked by that, boy, I don't know. You could be tricked by a lot of different things at that point. And that's not good. That's not what the world needs. That's not what this country needs. Especially if we really want to find out what happened here. You do an investigation to find out what happened. You don't begin with the theory that David Crowley is guilty. You begin with that theory, chances are you're probably going to come up with some things. Unfortunately, they couldn't even do that. All they could say in the end was, well, we couldn't find anybody else that did it, so it must have been David. This is why this is such a slam dunk case here. Only a few minutes in. But this is why this case is just such a very simple slam dunk case. For this reason.
She was the sole breadwinner, that she was not physically or emotionally abused. But
the thing was the sole breadwinner, again, it really, and we talked about this recently on one of the recent podcasts, like, who was taking care of who? Was David taking care of her? Was she taking care of David? I mean, to me, with the $14,000 check, in their mailbox, or not in their mailbox, left on their doorstep from David's dad, there's a pretty good argument he was taking care of them. He was going to take care of them. He wasn't going to let them fall or struggle where they would descend into this madness or anything like that. Sounds like they were going to be taken care of. And then we know the $30 million deal and all that stuff. Not that David was going to get $30 million, but the budget, what they were budgeting for this project was about $30 million, according to the Michael Entertainment Group. Why we don't see that here? It doesn't fit in with their narrative. It doesn't fit in with what they want you to think about David Crowley. These people are very desperate. Tom Lydon just comes off as very desperate. The police come off, not the whole police, but this captain or Chief Wrightskull, I think, comes off as very desperate to try to convince people that David Crowley did this without giving you any factual data that says this is why he did it. Really based on his movie, he killed his family and killed himself, and all. Really, we're supposed to believe all that with everything that we know about what happened inside of that house. We're supposed to believe, oh yes, it has everything. They believe it has a lot to do with his movie. Come on.
The financial struggles made her question the marriage.
The financial struggles they were talking about, I don't know. I mean, you can argue that either way, but again, both of the parents, David's parents and Kamel's parents, were both helping them. And $14,000 check on their front doorstep, I think they would have been all right for at least another year or so. What do you think? Kamel's father is the one who bought David a car, I think, for his birthday, and was paying their phone bills up until like October of 2014. Some of the issues that have been reported about Kamel's family and David, I think, are greatly exaggerated. You know, that's what I think. I could be wrong, but from what I've heard, there wasn't that much of a big problem. From what we've heard from Kamel's father, wasn't that much of a problem. No.
He just lost his way, financially lost his way.
See, when you say he financially lost his way, and this guy's supposed to be a friend of David Crowley, that David financially lost his way. What does that mean? Did he have millions and then he lost it? Was he broke? Was he going broke? No. And Mason Hendricks was a guy who was not very happy that the $14,000 check was mentioned in the police reports. Why do you think that was? That doesn't fit in with what he's telling you here, right? Because he's telling you they've financially lost their way, and then come to find out there's a $14,000 check on the front door. And then David has a working deal. We come to find that out. Why are these people lying? Why are they trying to steer a narrative that doesn't need to be steered? State whatever you think. State your opinions, but man, have it based on something. Don't just discredit your friend, a soldier, a filmmaker, a young man. Let everything go from. Don't just discredit it without having some basis in facts. And they don't. They don't have any facts. That's why this guy won't ever debate me, which he should. He should. But he politely declined. And there's very few people that would even be worth the time to debate. I think we can all agree on that. This guy would be one of them. Danny August Mason would be another one. David's brother would be another
one. Life, stress.
When his friend Mason Hendricks stopped by to see him,
he's guessing. Life, stress. I don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to say here. Just like he's just making it up as he goes along here. Just making it all up. Very sad. Very sad stuff, guys and gals. Okay, let's keep going.
Like meeting someone he didn't know. David wouldn't even invite him in the home.
He looked like he literally was sleeping and breathing on his computer. Failure was not an option for him.
By October,
That's another interesting quote. I did put that in my book. Failure was not an option for him. But then he's going to say, this guy pretty much gives you more motive why David wouldn't kill himself, because failure is not an option. But then he kills himself as the only option. I mean, this guy, Mason Hendricks, just really does not make sense. His story does not line up. It just does not add up. I just feel like he's just blowing smoke out of his ass, pretty much. He's just making it up as he goes along. I don't know. That's kind of how I felt about it. Best case scenario, at least.
Family was essentially cut off from the world. David and Kamel stopped talking to their families, asking everyone to stay away, even changing their phone numbers.
See, they don't mention the changing the phone number. They didn't change their phone numbers. Kamel's dad stopped paying the bills, so they had to get new phone numbers. And they gave David's brother and gave David's mom and gave David's dad his new number. They all got his new number before he died. Why isn't Tom Lydon telling you that? I mean, this is another hit piece on David Crowley, and there's no need for it. Just give us the facts, tell us what you know, but making up all this stuff that can be completely disproven, I mean, it raises eyebrows to these guys. Why would they do this? Are they that dumb? Tom Lydon is supposed to be a journalist, and he doesn't know better? He has no journalistic ethics? No knowledge of how to do a journalism piece? Or is there more to it?
Brother left their Christmas presents on the front step to avoid a confrontation.
He mentions the brother left the Christmas presents on the front door. But what does he not mention? What does he forget to mention? The $14,000 check in this brown paper bag here. He wasn't just leaving presents. He was leaving mail there too. Why'd you forget that, Tom? So it makes me wonder, were people just feeding Tom Lydon stuff like people may have been feeding other people things to only focus on certain things, to avoid certain facts of this case? Pretty interesting stuff here. We're not done with Tom Lydon by a long shot. Now, I know in the past, in the podcast that we've done a while ago, thought we were going to be done with Tom Lydon, but obviously that is not the case. So as time goes on, time wanders on, and we'll I don't know, we'll continue here. The audio may not be that great, so I may end up redoing all of this here. Sometimes it's better the second time around, right? So we'll see if this makes, I know the audio is bad because I don't have my regular microphone here, but you know, I've been wanting to talk about this for a very, very long time. And I'm just glad I'm able to now. These few minutes I have left here, we'll try to get through this. Can we make it? All right, so moving on.
And there the gift stayed for 3 weeks, until January 17th last year.
For 3 weeks. So again, they have to make sure they push the 3-week narrative, which is not based on the autopsy reports. It's based on David's internet activity. It's not based on the decomp rate. It's based on the internet activity. It's based on the activity from the house, as if that means that they're all dead. All right. We're not going to look at any other scenarios. We're not going to look at possible hostage situations or anything like that. No, we're just going to focus on the one thing there, and that's it. And that's what they do. I mean, it's just, and it's interesting. You see one person do it, then you see a few people do it, and then all of a sudden you have a lot of people doing it, and it's not just one person. I think that's what makes it very interesting to me. That it's like a program. There's just different people following along with this program here, and just going along with it. I don't understand it, to be honest with you, but yeah, I don't really know. I mean, I don't get it. So anyways, I'll continue on a little bit here. Let's continue.
Our neighbors discovered the 3 bodies looking in the front window. A sliding back door was found slightly ajar, apparently for the family dog. But there were no footprints in the snow, no sign of forced entry. Inside, detectives would find a scene of domestic horror.
Domestic horror. They would find really a scene of domestic horror. Did you hear what he said there? A scene of domestic horror. Man, this guy's, it's too much. Definitely not a journalist. A reporter. I don't know if you would even call him that. Something very, very strange. I mean, domestic scene of horror. They're just feeding on different people, and it's sad. You know, it's really sad how people can buy into it. I don't know. I'm just, I don't really know. I don't understand it, to be honest with you. So, it's just, I'm sorry. It's just too much. It's too much. These guys are too much.
Little love notes the couple left for each other around the house. An innocent child's room. Much of the crime scene itself we will not show you.
Oh, yeah, much of the crime scene we will not show you. They don't show you anything. What are they showing you here? They're not going to show you the bullet that was in the attic that the police missed. They're not going to show you the bullet that rolled out of this carpet over here, where this number 2 is. A bullet rolls out of the carpet 2 days later that the police missed. If they can miss bullets, don't you think they could miss anything that would show David Crowley did this? Of course. So it all comes back to, well, then what do they prove? What do they use to prove David Crowley did this? This. I apologize for this. Okay. There it is. All right. So that's good.
Bodies were found in the living room next to each other. They were badly decomposed and scavenged by the family dog. Judging by the male
Okay,
pilot,
so that's the other thing. They're badly decomposed, which if you've watched any of Catherine's videos, any of Sophia's videos that they've done, you know, the decomparate, there's early to moderate in the autopsy results. Autopsy results are what matter. Early to moderate is what they show. Heavily decomped is what is in the police reports by police officers, but the autopsies clearly show early to moderate. So that's why it's like, how long were these bodies there for is another big thing. So they can't really prove how long the bodies were there for. They can't even prove that David shot anybody. They can't prove any of this stuff. They can't even prove that the dog ate these bodies. We can assume the dog did, and I'm willing to assume that they did. We spoke with many, we've had several people speak with many veterinarians, and we get a different answer every time, unfortunately, or maybe that's good. Maybe that's good because it allows us, hopefully it keeps us keeping an open mind to we don't really know. And the problem is because the police did not do any tests, they don't really know. They don't really know if the dog ate any of those bodies. That's the sad thing. One test would have probably done that. There's a lot of tests that they don't do. And I don't know the difficulties or the prices or all of that, what it would be, but it just seems kind of logical to me that nobody is reporting that the dog had blood or anything like that on its mouth or on its, teeth or anything like that, which we've talked when Crypt talked with one vet up in Canada. I said, well, the dog could have licked it all off, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. But again, it's like, well, what are they using to prove that the dog was sitting there eating anything? They didn't see the dog eating the bodies. They didn't do any tests that would show that the dog ate these bodies. So what are they basing it on? If the bodies are so quote unquote heavily, if the decomposition rate is so far in, how would they even know? And it raises so many other questions. There's so many other things. You can go back and look at the body placements and how the bodies were. David's hand is sticking up in the air for any dog to eat. Doesn't eat it, but eats the other hand. And then Rania, he goes after her whole arm, eats her whole arm, somehow breaks her third rib, but doesn't eat her other hand. Then goes after Kamel, eats her head, eats her body, eats her, not her body, but eats her arms. Not her arms, her hands, her two hands. One hand that is above her head, other hand that is pretty much under her body. And this dog eats all of that from what they're telling us. It's very interesting. I don't know. I find it interesting at least. Maybe I'm wrong, but
up and a paper in the home. The murder-suicide took place the day after Christmas. David shooting Kamel twice in the head, Rania once, before shooting himself. Between their bodies, a Quran with pages torn out, opened to a traditional forgiveness prayer. And there on the wall, above the bodies.
And this is where it gets interesting. Maybe I should go back a few seconds here.
David shooting Kamel twice in the head.
Shooting Kamel twice in the head. Can't prove it. We don't know he shot her. But we're just going to assume. That's all they're doing. They're assuming David did this.
Rania once before shooting
and
himself.
Shot his daughter and then shot himself. You'd think they would have something here to back this up. They don't.
Between their bodies, a Quran.
This is another interesting. Between their bodies, a Quran. The Quran was very close to David's left hand. It was very bloody. And so he just happened to drop. If you look at where the Quran is, where it was placed next to David's body, it looks like it was placed there next to David's body. Not that David was doing this weird ritual or ripping out pages and then set it right there. Come on. It's not in the middle of these bodies. It's closer to David's left leg, really. But also these pages are everywhere. They're everywhere. They're on the other side of Kamel. They're on several sides of Kamel. It's just very interesting where they are.
With pages torn out, opened to a traditional forgiveness prayer.
And this is interesting too, the open to a traditional forgiveness prayer. You can see where it's
pages
open
torn
to.
out.
So pages torn out. See, he goes from the Quran to pages that are torn out, right? So is the pages open to a forgiveness prayer? Or is it other things? Is it in the Quran? Is the Quran open to a forgiveness prayer? It's just a lot of hokey pokey, a lot of dancing around, and just not a lot of facts, not a lot of what we would hope to see in this case. Just factual evidence. I mean, that's all I think that's all people are looking for. I don't think they're looking for anything else. So it's pretty sad.
To a traditional forgiveness prayer. And there on the wall, above the bodies, scrawled in blood, the words, Allah Akbar. God is the greatest.
Allahu Akbar. God is the greatest. And there it is right there. Now, this is the first time. Remember, this is in January of 2016. This is still early. This is before the sloppy mentor came out or anything like that. This is stuff that was redacted in the original police reports. Later, we got the unredacted versions of those police reports that were missing a couple pages for some reason. So all of this is very interesting too. Now, I guess the alums didn't want, they were trying to pretty much hide this, but that's not the police's job, right? They can, I mean, how can they hide something like this? This is going to come out. And they know that. Even in the 464 photos that we got a little bit later after this, they came out. Now, from what we were told, Tom Lydon was given a lot of photos and documents that he shouldn't have been given. And isn't it interesting that after that, boom, it was like, we didn't really get much. 94 pages, police reports, 464 photos. If we would have stopped there, that's all we would have gotten. I think that's what they were hoping for. Thankfully, that didn't happen. And we had a lot of great people who kept digging and kept asking and got those documents, got the other documents, and all these documents. There's no need to hide the documents. All they had to do was show us what proved David Crowley guilty. They couldn't do it. They could not give us 13-page report like we've seen in other cases, a 10-page report, a 2-page report, something that says, this is what happened, this is why David is guilty. It's all they had to do, not withhold evidence like this that we're seeing here, not try to retract things like we're seeing here that they did. All of the Muslim mention, all the Allahu Akbar, the blood writing mention, they tried to hide that from the public. Why? If David snapped, wouldn't that help your case? Wouldn't that help people see why David, quote unquote, snapped? What kind of a sane person would not write this here? But it was like so far-fetched, or, maybe they really respected the Alam family that much that they wanted to keep them away. Tom Lydon didn't. Put it right out here for everybody. Why do you think Tom Lydon did that? Eric Nelson was not happy that Tom Lydon did this at that time because Eric Nelson's film hadn't come out. Eric Nelson probably wanted to come out there during his film. And that didn't happen. Once this information here came out, I think it changed a lot of people's minds. I think some of them may have realized that they were duped, that they were tricked. In this case, took a very bad turn. Very bad turn, and not for truth. And I think there was a lot of issues created. A lot of problems happened within the Gray State Goons once all this came
out. Who wrote Allah Akbar on the wall?
He did.
That is a lie. They cannot prove David Crowley wrote that. He lied right there. Look at his face there. It's the face of somebody who just lied to Tom Lydon and to everybody watching this. A complete lie. Because you can't say that. right. Let's continue.
In her blood.
Yes.
Why did he do that?
We believe.
Look at that.
That was.
We believe in her blood. See, so they don't know that he did it. That's the first thing. They don't know that David did this. But then he goes on, well, we believe. Based on what? You believe this based on what? Doesn't make sense to me.
Was just kind of a parting shot.
A parting shot. Yeah, a parting shot. There it is. It was a parting shot. All right, so I'll stop this one right there. I'll be back next time. We'll talk more about this roasting of Tom Lydon. Greetings. Welcome, everyone. I know this is the channel that is mostly reserved for David Crowley content, but since the channel I wanted to do this stream on, I can't stream there for another couple days because of a violation, another Trump video that I played there, and of course got struck down. So I will be streaming this here, and then I'll move it over to my other channel once I can get back into it. So this is episode 15 of The Invisible Enemy. For those of you, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to episode number 29 of The Gray Stage. My name is Dan Hennon, joined here with Greg Fernandez Jr., the author of the book, The Gray Stage. Now, this is a book about the Crowley family, triple homicide that took place in Apple Valley back in 2015. He wrote a book about it, the only book that I am aware of that's even out there on this case. And it's very well done. We are doing audio episodes and video here talking about the book, going through chapter by chapter. Today we're going to be covering on chapter 14, chapter called Rotten Reviews. And for those following along in your book at home, it's on page 123. 123 of The Gray Stage. How are you doing today, Greg?
I'm doing pretty good, Dan. Dan, I figured I would pull up my book here and I'd follow along with you. We're very old school here today. I love it.
Yeah, this is good. So basically, for the listeners out there, the book is really for the most part done. We're down to the closing section, and now once that documentary came out, there were a lot of reviews done on Rotten Tomatoes and whatnot about it. And what we do here is this chapter, you've got that we're really reviewing the commentary that the folks are making, and is it legit or not? Is it propaganda? Is it and we'll do some research on some of the comments that are written. This is nationwide now, nationwide comments that are put on Rotten Tomatoes about the film that we were in. And but what we'll notice here, a lot of the same verbiage creeps up, a lot of the same terminology creeps up. And so once again, the sloppymentary, as you call it, the Eric Nelson film called The Gray State, is a propaganda piece. We've all come to the conclusion, not just opinion, that's it's for the most part, it seems to be that it was a funded propaganda piece to make it really look like us are the bad guys. David Crowley was a bad guy. He killed his family, and it's an open and shut case. But they really go after those of us reviewing things like this, and put us down is what they're doing. So here's where it starts, page 123, chapter 14 of the book. And I'll go ahead and start here, Greg, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. It says, on July 11th, 2017, Dan Hennon and I recorded a special broadcast giving our opinions on the first reviews of Eric Nelson's documentary, A Gray State. Here are my notes associated with those rotten reviews. First one, Frank Scheck. So we're going through the folks here that are leaving comments on nationwide Rotten Tomatoes website that still, I think to this day, has like a 10 rating, doesn't it?
Oh, really? Wow.
It's way up there. It's one of the best movies out there for documentaries in 2017. But here's an individual by the name of Frank Scheck. Here's the notes that you had for this. In Mr. Scheck's review, the keyword alt-right is mentioned 3 times, and Alex Jones is mentioned twice. Though Alex Jones appears briefly in the documentary, The first paragraph of the movie review focuses on Alex Jones. Quote, right-wing media provocateur Alex Jones recently admitted in court that he's merely, quote, playing a character, thereby lending an ironic subtext to Eric Nelson's documentary about the deaths of aspiring filmmaker David Crowley and his family, end quote. So we get all this alt-right stuff. Now, I don't consider myself alt-right. You don't consider yourself alt-right. And they lump us in here with Alex Jones, which is okay, I guess, but he's only in very briefly. But this individual, Frank Scheck, already mentions Alex Jones a bunch of times. And so trying to go down this conspiracy rabbit hole that we are conspiracy nut job, alternate folks that are bat crazy. You know, it's just that's what they're trying to lump us into. And they haven't even gotten into reviewing the movie yet.
Right. It's all about Alex Jones here. And when he talks about Alex Jones said that he was quote unquote playing a character, that is directly related to the court case that Alex Jones, one of the lawsuits that he was being sued for, tied to Sandy Hook. And so, of course, they're setting the stage. Frank Scheck is setting the stage here to let, if anyone had any doubts that Eric or that David was crazy or anything, you know, they're just going to just try to trick people into not even focusing. Don't focus on David. This is all about Alex Jones. Alex Jones is playing a character in this actual lawsuit, and so. Obviously, if he's friends with Alex Jones, if he's tied with Alex Jones, then there's something wrong here. Interesting to note what David last said about Alex Jones at the end of his life, but I'm sure we'll get there in a future show here.
So the second paragraph goes on to say, Scheck claims, quote, several self-identified citizen investigators, end quote, attempted to prove that the family was murdered. Quote, credibility means nothing to me, unquote, one of them ironically comments. Scheck is talking about me. Now, this is you here writing as he's going after you, saying when you made the quote that credibility is nothing to me, which is a very good quote, I believe, as far as I'm not out to impress certain people or not. I'm just here to tell the truth. I don't care if you like me or not as far as that. Scheck is talking about me, and he is wrong. I'm not trying to prove that the family was murdered. I'm not sure what Scheck is trying to prove with that comment, but it makes me wonder how much time he actually spent researching the case. So, Greg, you're one of those from the very beginning, and I commend you on this, that even way late after we started, essentially solving the crime, is that you said, I'm still open to whatever it is. Wherever the facts lead us, that's where we will go. We're not here to be on one side. We're not here to be on another side. We're not here to persuade. We're not here to convince listeners on shows like this or readers in your book of what to believe. You're supposed to we're here to say, let you draw your own conclusions to what you think happened. But never did you ever say that David didn't do it or David did it. You just said, I just think there's too many inconsistencies here. It needs to be looked into, which I think is a very good statement to make. Finishing up, he says, Scheck's rotten review leaves the casual reader with the false impression that there are only two choices. Either David killed his family or the government is responsible for their deaths. Scheck's review, just like all the others, completely ignores any other possibilities. Do you wonder why? Overall, you say, in bold type, I find this review grossly irresponsible. So I agree 100%. It does leave the casual reader that it's some sort of conspiracy that the government did it, or the only other option is that David did it. And so we're here presenting these other options and keeping the door open to anything that could have happened. But they're saying it's black and white. It's once again, it's this option A or option B. It reminds me a lot of the Hegelian dialect, where they're trying to shove you into two categories without being open to say, it's kind of like right, left, Democrat, Republican paradigm. Those things are set up that way on purpose to lead people into two camps. It doesn't give the option to say, hey, there's 3 or 4 possibilities or 5. It just says it's either this or that. Now, we were certainly open to the fact that it could have been a government conspiracy, but we kind of ruled that out right away. we also have proof and evidence that David certainly did not do this. So neither of those options are right. So I think you're right. Frank Scheck was fishing everyone down those two paths, and discrediting us along the way. Self-identified citizen investigators. I don't know what else that folks we could call ourselves. Self-identified citizen investigators. I don't know. We both don't do this for a living, so it's not a career. We're armchair investigators, I guess, but so are a lot of other people. But
no, he kind of makes the reader want to think that this is a bad thing, that we really have to identify ourselves as something. It doesn't matter what we would identify ourselves as. It would have still been the same thing. He would have still written this in that same way to try to discredit us, instead of just saying, hey, these guys think David Crowley didn't do it, and here's why David Crowley did it. That's what the article should have been. That's what it should have been.
That's what I would call a true comment on a review, on a movie review.
Right.
Wide open.
Yeah, that would have been great.
This is setting a narrative. This is pushing a narrative without being a real review.
I never understood why he would say that the credibility means nothing to me. Is one of them ironically states. I never, or comments, right? What is the irony? What is he trying to say there? That I guess because I don't have credibility, so it means nothing to me, or what I'm saying is not credible? Or?
I think is that if you're trying to push a conspiracy theory, that you're going to try to be as credible as you can so folks will believe you. A snake oil salesman, a salesman as far as trying to sell someone something, which is very different than what you and I are doing here. We're leading people down the path and having them draw their own conclusion based on facts, based on evidence, based on real things. We're keeping our opinions and theories to ourselves, but you'll need credibility if you're trying to push, alien, UFO, Mars stories, Bigfoot, conspiracy. That's what the typical person thinks that is, and then they're not going to get too far if a book is written by someone with no credibility. Who's going to believe it? I think is what he's getting at, because he thinks that we're Alex Jones followers and friends, that we're pushing a conspiracy. I don't think that he doesn't even entertain the thought in his head that this could actually be true. Your book.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing, if you're trying to push conspiracies, is you have to be credible. You have to have a PhD, a doctorate after your name, certain initials and acronyms for all this degrees and things that you have to be able to be credible. We're just pushing things down the road. We're not trying to sell anything. We're not trying to sell. We're not trying to make anyone believe something.
Right. Yeah, I used to think people were credible because they had the facts, and that's what I would think. So when he says that, pretty much saying I'm not a credible person, what I'm saying is not a credible source. I was hoping he would at least give the reader some knowledge as to why. What did I say that was wrong? Where did I get my facts wrong? But again, he doesn't go there.
And you didn't. In fact, the best thing about your book right here, Greg, is every single thing you say is backed up with the quote or the statement or the passage or the evidence from the lab that they said. You're not putting words in anyone's mouth here. We're not leading people down the wrong path. But that's how I could tell that he wasn't an authentic commenter, reviewer of this, because he was pushing an agenda. He was pushing a narrative to make you and I both look bad, discredited. That's all he was focusing on. And I think the same thing for me. I'm not interested in worrying about who thinks that I'm credible or not. That's why we have the facts speak for themselves. That's
sounds simple.
Now the next page is a review that's done by a gentleman by the name of Nick Shager. And so here it goes on, starting on page 124. It says, in Mr. Shager's review, the keyword alt-right is mentioned 5 times. Alex Jones is mentioned 4 times. And President Donald Trump is referenced 3 times. Very interesting. This is a comment. He's supposed to be reviewing a movie. None of these things. So what they're doing is combining everyone into the same bucket that it's wrong. So Shager's review begins and ends with Alex Jones, when it should be about David Crowley and the alleged double murder suicide. Instead of focusing on the allegation against David Crowley, Shager focuses more on Alex Jones and Donald Trump. Well, I agree with you there, Greg. It's those two names shouldn't even be part of the review.
Yeah, Alex Jones.
They're very polarizing names, and that's why they're inserted, I think, into the review.
Yeah, and Donald Trump is not Donald Trump is not in the movie. He's not in any of David's work, as far as I know. David was more about Ron Paul. So I was like, well, they don't mention Ron Paul. I don't believe in any of this stuff, but they make sure to mention
more the Gray State guys were libertarian guys. Ron Paul kind of cats, you know.
Right.
But Donald Trump is not in the movie. Donald Trump's not mentioned. So the fact that he's mentioned here 4 times, I mean, Trump's mentioned 3 times, and Alex Jones is mentioned 4 times. Alex Jones is in a very, very small part of the movie. But once again, because they're polarizing names to the negative, they're going to insert those as much as they can to have people think that you and I, are part of that same dump, that same camp, that same group. And I think with all the episodes we've done of these 28 episodes, I don't think you and I have ever mentioned Donald Trump in this case ever.
I don't think not
very
in this
rarely.
case.
I don't even think we talk about Alex Jones a lot.
No, I don't think so either. Not in a positive way, at least. I mean, like I said many times, you know, I kind of get when Alex Jones didn't cover the David Crowley case. That was pretty much it. That's when I stopped watching Alex Jones, stopped basically listening to him. I was pretty much done with him at that point.
Yeah, the fact that his response to this case back in 2015 wasn't there, and in multiple attempts were to try to get him to do a show, a podcast, something exploring the scenarios here, and he says, no, basically I'm not going to do it. You know, he did it himself, and it's a done deal.
Yep.
And that we both kind of called it quits on him. So his name has not been coming up. We see these names mentioned all over the reviews. In the article, it says, a friend of David Crowley calls the Gray State fan base legitimately insane, with quotes. Legitimately insane, the fan base.
I think I know who that fan is. I think that's I think it's Mitch Heil. I can't prove it, but I think that's Mitch Heil.
It's interesting. You know, we're covering this case. I was never a fan of Gray State or David Crowley until I heard of this incident. And so right there, I'm not in that bucket of legitimately insane as part of the fan base. I didn't know the name David Crowley existed until the murder happened. Now, you, on the other hand, have been following the Gray State, and some other people following our page have been following it and could be considered fans or following the project. But I also wouldn't say that those people are insane. I don't. The folks that I have followed in this project are very bright individual, intelligent, critical thinkers that are following this project and the David Crowley murder. They're very, very, for the most part, awake people. But like I said, I'm not part of the fan base, I guess, but I am now.
Yeah, you are now. I mean, I'm not either, but whoever this, maybe they're a doctor, maybe they're a psychiatrist, and they're able to just call everybody, the fan base, not including us, obviously, since we're not really in the fan base, the whole fan base. He just pretty much diagnosed the whole fan base.
Well, now they're throwing the whole fan base under the table, under the bus.
Under the bus, pretty much.
And the murder has nothing to do with the fan base. It's a family of 3 were murdered in their home. So
yeah, and this friend may have been somebody who worked on the Gray State project. So
well, and then once again, it's planting a seed. It's pushing people down a narrative, is what we're seeing with these reviews. They're planting seeds along the way. I wonder if that friend worked on the Gray State project with David. You go on to say, here we have another film review that doesn't mention the numerous holes in the police investigation and alleged conclusion. Forget about looking for facts to prove David's guilt. Instead, this review focuses on rumors and innuendo to subconsciously convince the reader that David was a, quote, alt-right filmmaker who, along with his wife, went crazy and committed a double murder suicide. The article teases Comel's complicity in the crimes and dabbles into the theory of a supernatural presence that had been following the Crowleys for over a year. Now, we've covered that in this book as well. Shager goes on to write that David and Comel embark on a, quote, on a joint path of wholesome isolation from everyone they knew and became convinced that they were being persecuted not only by the state, but also by other worldly forces. Between that sort of lunacy and David's filmmaking endeavor, which involves staging dog attacks on civilians and point-blank assassinations, is no surprise that young Rania, in a candid video moment, is seen describing her and her parents' imaginary murders in gruesome terms, quote, "This room is bloody, the red man is going to get you," quote. It's a stark illustration of how the mindset adopted by David and his alt-right brethren warps and corrupts. Now, I need to stop just there. This is
That's hard to read. That's hard to read. Yeah, you did good at that. It's hard to follow, I'm sure.
So they do. This article does say now that Comel is involved or complicit, a joint path. They were withdrawing from everyone, and they were being persecuted by the state and other worldly forces. Wow.
They really focus on that, on the pact and the paranormal aspect of this case and everything, and try to give you some quotes. But again, it's interesting how they can just pull things from Eric Nelson's film, but they don't have time to look at any of the documents where they may have questions about just some of the simple questions that you would say, well, what proves David guilty? That's what these articles should be focused on, but really they're not, because Eric Nelson's film isn't focused on that. So I guess they get a pass for that reason.
Well, they pluck, two scenes here from the Gray State trailer, the dog attacks, point blank assassinations. I think they were just included something that a viewer could have seen in the 2-minute trailer is all that was. And then they bring Rania into it, describing that the red man's going to get you as far as this stark thing. Now, we've already covered that as well. That was a common thing from the production company Bad Robot in some television series, Lost, and some other things like that. It was a little red man, a little robot. And they've got this coming into now that she was corrupted, essentially. She was part of it. Her world was normalized by murders and death and gruesome things, which is also not true. And they mentioned alt-right again. It's a warped mindset, and it's corrupt. And the brethren. I mean, it's this Nick Schlager just goes all over the top. And I have yet to see anything here that's even accurate of his entire review so far. And he says, and ending with, and the fact that, as a news reporter points out, Rania's morbid fantasy functioning as Shining-esque prophecy only further underlines how dreams of death and destruction often end by coming true. Wow. Now we're getting into this, The Shining once again, the movie. And overall, you have in bold letters at the bottom, it says, overall, this article fails in an attempt to connect David Crowley to the alt-right and to Alex Jones. Still, it does a great job in making baseless allegations. This whole review by Nick Schlager is baseless allegations. It's cherry picking things along with names and events to tie in to how he's such a bad guy, David Crowley. That's all this is talking about. It's throwing David Crowley and his entire family under the bus, including and his 5-year-old daughter. They're all nuts. They're all mental. They're all lunatics.
I think that's the biggest problem that I think a lot of people have with this one is, wow, they not only went after David, they went after David's wife and David's daughter too. They made them all look crazy, like they were all just kind of, just in this weird world, saying these weird things without proper context.
It's common nowadays, Greg, for someone to think, hey, I'm going to watch several movies. I'm going to go to Rotten Tomatoes, read the reviews, and pick which one I want to go with, and see how its ratings are, what kind of ratings. And they'll get to something like this, and they'll read a variation of reviews like this that are negative, demented, and discrediting. And so they'll already have that seed planted when they go watch the movie that this is what it's about. And so it essentially works, because these reviews were written right as the Rotten Tomatoes reviews came out. There was 5 of them the next day appeared. The ones that we're reading now, these didn't take a couple days to appear. These first 5, I believe, were out there the very next day. almost like they were in the can in draft mode, and once it went live, let's press it because press publish, and then these comments are already out there. There wasn't enough time for people to watch the movie to log in then to write a creative review like this. These reviews are already done, I believe, and then just published to the site when it was set. But they were out there very, very soon.
Yeah, because the film hadn't really come out yet, right? It had come out in it had premiered maybe one or two places by the. I mean, this is we recorded this. We talked about this on July 11th, 2017. I don't know if it really came out till that summer. I know it didn't hit Netflix until the end of 2017.
Yeah, Christmas time, I believe, or November. It started coming, being shown, but
because it was at the Walker Theater in Minnesota, I think, right around this time, maybe. So maybe it was right around summer of 2017.
So these reviews were out there by the time we did this show, which was in July, right? July 11th.
Right, and we hadn't seen the movie yet. We hadn't
even seen it. Yes, correct. We had not even seen it. But these are the reviews that were out on the Rotten Tomatoes website before the public could even get a chance to see, before it was publicly shown in mass for the mass to see it. Very interesting. Now, the third one is Anthony Kaufman. In Mr. Kaufman's review, the keyword alt-right is mentioned 5 times, while Alex Jones and Donald Trump are both mentioned twice. Here's another article that begins with an alt-right wet dream. The writer calls the premise for David Crowley's Gray State movie, quote, far-fetched, and labels Alex Jones and Donald Trump's favorite fake news conspiracy theorists.
I love that quote.
So this is, once again, Trump's not in the movie. Alex Jones isn't, for the most part, in the film at all. And they're calling it a far-fetched, it's basically an alt-wet dream, alt-right wet dream to put these characters in there together. Wow.
It has everything. It has everything that you would need to it's pretty much not watch it.
It's throwing the whole group under the bus.
I mean, I would almost think that they don't want anybody to watch this film the way that they're writing these articles.
Yeah, it's very, very negative. It goes on to say the author claims that, quote, Crowley's fans and devotees were quick to call foul play, suggesting that the U.S. government assassinated one of their would-be leaders. But what about people like Dan Hennon and myself, Mr. Kaufman? What about those of us who were never fans or devotees of Crowley or his work? And see, that's a good point, because they're putting us all in one basket. They're dumping us all into one bucket as lunatics. You or I were not devotees of the work. I don't think we had ever considered David Crowley to be a would-be leader in the future, a possible leader of this country, or a leader in some way, shape, or form. He was a very good artistic guy and a film creator, film director, filmmaker. Very, very good. But yeah, once again, it brings up the fans and devotees. Now, it goes on to say, does Kaufman conveniently forget about us because we did not fit into the storyline that either David is guilty or the government killed him? Is it possible that there are more options unmentioned by the author? Also, who considered David one of their leaders? I haven't heard anyone state David was their leader. And so it's very interesting how they're putting these, what the normal general public, I think, thinks, or perceptions of these things, and labels us all the same. And if you go through one by one, like these articles here, we're breaking them down, the actual review itself, and almost every single line is wrong in the review.
Right.
It almost, like you said earlier, makes me wonder if these first 3 reviewers that we've read even watched the movie, is how off base this seems. Kaufman also explains his view about the truth of this situation. But the truth, as director Eric Nelson reveals in his carefully plotted out and sympathetic investigation, is more tragic and sad than shadowy. What I find sad and shadowy is Kaufman's lack of knowledge about this case. Very good point. It's almost like he didn't do any research, maybe never even watched the movie, and certainly hasn't studied the case. It is very sad and shadowy. Now, you and I have already said multiple times that we don't believe a shadowy element of the government is behind this murder anyway. It has nothing to do with a conspiracy of deep, dark dark secret ops guys carrying this thing out. The ultimate mystery of Crowley's case, Kaufman writes, then becomes not if he was murdered, but how did he and his loving wife embark on such an irrevocable downward spiral together? Wow. Once again, now he's throwing Comel under the bus, and they embarked on this, this downward spiral together, which I also don't think was true either. Kaufman ends the review by claiming Eric Nelson's documentary reveals the catastrophic ways in which both the government and the alt-right community failed a man and his family, and not in the way that Alex Jones might think. I think Kaufman failed his readers and should be ashamed of his foolish piece of writing. I agree 100% there. Mr. Kaufman's review was foolish. If anything, it's very wrong. Now, your summary here in bold type, Greg, says, overall, this review tries to attach David and Kamel to a pact theory, to the alt-right label, to Alex Jones, and to Donald Trump. Try as you might, you have failed. None of these things are connected, and that was his whole goal of this article, is to lump these all together. Very interesting. Now, the next one is Jason Bailey.
See, I've never heard of any of these guys, by the way. I don't know who they are. Have you heard of any of these people so far?
No, but I think their shtick, so to say, would be that they are well revered, movie reviewers, Roger Ebert, type of guys that are quick to be the professionals. The movie review professionals are the ones, usually they're your first commenters on movie reviews. They're the first ones who get it out there. And then it's if you read farther down on the Rotten review on Rotten Tomatoes, those commenters are just everyday people like us. But the first handful of any, if it's a new release CD, a new release film, a movie coming out, the professional reviewers are the first ones that have the first stab at watching it first to do a review on it. And that's who these individuals that I've never heard of are trying to be is what they're the professionals, is what they're trying to push across, I think.
I don't know how credible they are, but again, this is coming from somebody who isn't credible himself. So take my word with a grain of salt.
Correct. And these are not meant to be just public Joe Schmoes, John Doe writing a review. They are, even the way they write and the way they write their review is very, I wouldn't say condescending, but you can tell that they're trying to push the narrative here. Now, Jason Bailey's the next one. In Bailey's 4-sentence review, the keyword alt-right is mentioned 0 times. Alex Jones is only mentioned once. Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Now, then again, we are back to the pact theory, which seems to play a key role at the end of the documentary, A Gray State. Bailey calls the documentary, quote, sad story of a couple succumbing to despair and to the same kind of paranoia that infused his work, end quote. Powerful. But wait, there's more, you go on to say. Don't forget the darkness which can overtake us all. It's a hard movie to watch, as his private audio and video recordings serve as journals of a descent into madness.
Wow.
But this is a harrowing portrait. How easily our own darkness can take us over if we let it, end quote. Are you scared yet? Make sure you keep your lights on and don't let the bed bugs bite, is what you've put on here. Now, here Bailey's pushing the fear factor, the fear. You got to be careful what you do in your life, in your professional and personal life, because it could grab a hold of you and take you to some harrowing depths. And there is, it looks like Sophia is on now.
Hey, Sophia, how are you?
Hi, how are you guys?
Good.
We're on page 127, Sophia. We're going over some of the reviews of the movie that were written on Rotten Tomatoes website. And we're having some fun here because these are very, very random. and it seems to us so far that those who have written the reviews have either not seen the movie itself or have seen it but not done any research regarding the case. They're not well versed as far as the case is concerned or the investigation. but they're quick to point fingers and add names like Donald Trump and Alex Jones and alt-right to all of the writings. These phrases are used all throughout.
So they got their gaslighting talking points.
Oh, that's about the best way, I think, to say this. They got the gaslighting talking points before they wrote the review. I mentioned earlier before you came on, Sophia, that I do believe that these reviews were all written already in the can and written and saved. And then once the Rotten Tomatoes website was available for this film, they were conveniently slapped up there the very next day. These, I think, were all done. This is all propaganda pieces, I believe. But Jason Bailey's using the pack theory, and Kamel, because of what they both did together, resulted in this horrible act by what they were doing and what they were getting involved in. And then the key word is they. Kamel and David.
So we have three or four of these guys who have mentioned this pack theory, whether a little subtly or even a little bit more viciously, really, at some point here. And this is just more reason why Kamel's family, from what they've stated, they wanted their footage taken out of this film. They didn't want no part of this film, and I can totally see why.
Because you're right, Greg. They were going to be in the film. They were interviewed. They had their pieces in the film, and then at the last minute, they told them to yank them out, get them out of there. The Alam family was not interested in being any part of this documentary at all. And this is it. All these, since that movie came out, it was easily can tell that they're trying to drive home the fact that Kamel was involved, complicit, or helped or aided in the downfall of David, and they both did all this together. Now, your final summary in bold-face print, Greg, says, overall, this review is a harrowing portrait of a writer who needs to do more research before succumbing to assumptions about a case he knows very little about. And I think that's very true. Jason Bailey, I think in this case, if you're listening here tonight, I don't think you know much about the investigation or the case, and it's hard to assume that you even watched the film before writing this review about this. He's all over the board, this guy.
That's a nice way to put it.
He's all over they're jumping all around the board here. And now on the bottom section of page 127, if you're following along in the book, is a reviewer by the name of Chris Barsanti. His says, in Mr. Barsanti's review, the keyword alt-right is mentioned 3 times, and Alex Jones is referenced twice, if you count the word InfoWars. The headline of Barsanti's review begins with, "When Fantasies Kill." Quotes. Nothing to fear here, right?
I gotta love those buzzwords.
And it's buzzwords. Yes. The headline continues to attack David Crowley, labeling this case as, quote, the murderous madness of an alt-right paranoiac in a gray state, end quote. There's the fear porn we've become accustomed to in these reviews. Thanks, Christopher.
I really think that it was this movie that set off the whole alt-right, because up until then, I had not heard of that word. And I don't see David as alt-right at all. I mean, if he was, would he be married to a Muslim woman from the Middle East? And I mean, I don't see it. And anyway, it's crazy.
I agree, and we'll ask Greg here next. But I don't remember hearing alt-right before this movie even came out at all, as far as a term. Eric Nelson and the documentary came up with the phrase alt-right, and that's the first I've heard. Now it's very common now, of course, but before the movie, Greg, were you familiar with this term?
Yeah, I think there were some protests that were happening, and they were basically alt-right protests. Remember, they were trying to tie Donald Trump to this alt-right thing. So the timing is very strange, because it was right around this time. There were riots, obviously, ever since Trump got in. There seemed to have been these riots that were happening, but so there were these alt-right wing people. So that term was very, very new as far as what I had heard. And so when I heard that they were trying to connect it to David, I'm like, wow, I don't even think that term was when David was with us. I don't think that was a term. There was no alt-right back then. I could be wrong. There was right wing, I think, but I don't know if there was this alt-right thing back in 2014. I don't remember that.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I think that was developed by the HRC
Oh,
campaign
okay.
as kind of a, like deplorables and stuff like that.
Right. Okay. All right. I see. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we talked before you came
Or-
on, Sophia, that
Mhm.
David and his group, they were very proud. What's the group? Libertarians. They were really libertarian
Libertarians, yes.
Ron Paul followers, if you will. So they were very much in that camp. I don't think they were a Donald Trump group at all, but alt-right. They did utilize that phrase here in this because they really pushed it down our throats here in the reviews.
And it's just all part of the agenda. Just you got to get those buzzwords in there.
Well, speaking of
that's
of those buzzwords, that's how he starts this off. When fantasies kill. I mean, the whole theory that David Crowley did anything, that David Crowley murdered anyone, that is the fantasy. That is the biggest fantasy involved in this whole thing. There's absolutely no evidence, and Eric Nelson doesn't provide any to show that these are fantasies or anything. That it's just very weird how they twist everything. How they always love to just turn it and twist it and act like we're kind of the bad ones who are even asking this, that David was the bad person without even proving it or adding any context or any facts that would show David's fantasies were killing or any of the fantasies were killing. These buzzwords, like you say, really, really, I wouldn't say that they triggered me, but they really stood out to me, and I really focused on a lot of. That's why I started counting. How many times are they saying alt-right? How many times are they saying Alex Jones? How many times are they saying Donald Trump? And it was more than I thought. It was pretty interesting.
Could you imagine being the Crowley family or even the Alam family and reading these articles? And I mean, that just must have been more salt in their wounds. It's just got to be horrible.
Yeah, because they ended up pulling out all these instances of the movie of the Gray State. After all this stuff came out, and once they saw the final version of what the movie looked like, they were going right after Comel's family and her.
Yeah, and that started as soon as they started playing the recordings in the movie. That's where the decline against Kamel was focused.
Yeah, and they, and what they did with all of this, there were gigabytes of data found as far as videos and audio. And what they did, Sophia, is cherry pick the ones that make Kamel and David or David look bad and use that all throughout the movie. They didn't use any video footage of David or Kamel being good or happy, intelligent, a loving couple and proud parents of the daughter. They kept all that out, and so they helped push that to suppress them as going down this downward spiral.
Well, the last two recordings that had come out on there talking about the voice, and then the rapture video is what a lot of people call it. They are highly edited, and once you put headphones in, you can hear all the stopping points, the edit points, everything. So they even took that out of context. One of those videos was over 7 minutes long, and we just got a little clip of it. And that one was edited to make them sound crazy.
And that's what gets back into this propaganda piece, because in a true propaganda film movie like this, you're going to have unlimited funds or unlimited funding and unlimited staff to do all these edits. This would take many, many hours to get this crafted the way they wanted it. And a typical individual person doing a documentary is not going to have that. Lots of changes and edits were done to get this carefully crafted down to a 90-minute documentary that throws the whole family under the bus. Now we know Kamel is 100% victim in this case, and the fact that they're even lumping her into this is disgusting to me.
Yeah.
Now it goes on, it says, once again, the focus quickly turns to Alex Jones, bashing his fans and their depth of research. Why? Apparently, Mr. Barsanti has done extensive research on every Alex Jones fan, past, present, right? Or else, why would he make such a ridiculous statement? Several times in Chris Barsanti's review, David is connected to the imaginary alt-right movement without proof. But that is to be expected in these 5 reviews. Barsanti makes it sound as if all conspiracy theorists, or whatever that keyword is supposed to mean to him, are not, next page, open to the possibility that David committed these crimes. That is simply not true. So the research that we've done in the group, the Justice for David Crowley group, is to show that the evidence does support that David could not and did not kill himself. He did not and could not kill his wife or his daughter. It's pretty evident to see that the government was also not involved with this, but we know that David didn't do it. So I don't know what else there is to conjure up here in these reviews. It's, well, and it only gets better here, Greg. Look at the next sentence. Quote, we see a couple self-proclaimed citizen investigators dismiss the notion that the crime scene was what it appeared to be. Barsanti continues, darkly hinting at outside forces that wanted Crowley silenced. I do dismiss the notion that the crime scene was what it appeared to be if someone is going to tell me the crime scene provided evidence of David's guilt, especially since the crime scene had to be updated twice within a month of finding the bodies. Why is it this fact was never mentioned in any of the film reviews or articles about David Crowley? We'll stop there for a minute here. There's a lot in there, Greg.
Once again, we get the self-proclaimed citizen investigator, almost word for word as the other article. I see what you're saying.
Just to be fair, and Sophia may not know this, but when we did the interviews, Greg, they did ask if we wanted our names to be shown, and below our name what our title was, or what did we want our titles to be for this film. You and I looked at each other like, I don't know. You could put something, I think we said, let's put something like citizen investigators. I don't know. We didn't spend more than 5 seconds thinking about it. And that's what they happened to use. So yeah. I wouldn't say self-proclaimed, but they did ask for a title beneath our names as far as how we relate to this case. And that's what we just happened to use. And I think that's fair. I still agree with that. I wouldn't change it if we redid it today.
No, me either.
We're darkly hinting at outside forces. And then this, once again, I do believe is getting back to this government did it, shadowy government, some dark ops project killed him because he was getting to be too famous. I don't believe that for a second. And I don't think Greg does either.
No, I don't believe that either. I don't think it was outside forces at all.
I think if you go back and watch what we said, Greg, on the 2 or 3 minutes that were even in the film, was just saying, look at the evidence and look at where it takes you. It may not be David doing it. It may not be, who knows what it is. But the official narrative, the official story cannot be true. It's too loosey-goosey. That's all that we were saying. I don't think we were leading anyone down some dark hole or rabbit hole of a shadowy government doing this. We just said it does not look, it looks staged. It looks like it's a set up stage scene.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting, right. Again.
They changed twice in the first month. Things were changed by the police, not by us. This is their words, not ours. So
yeah, they never go after the police, what the police did wrong or really anything like that. I mean, they didn't even get to talk to the police because the police at that point didn't want to talk to them. They didn't want to be part of this film either. The only reason they were is because they got lumped in with what Tom Lydon did. That's it. But they're not in, aside from Tom Lydon's news report, they're not in this film. But it's made to look like they were filmed, like this was filmed for Eric Nelson's film when Tom Lydon is talking to those cops. But at this point, even the cops wanted nothing to do with this case. They were completely done and over it because they did so much wrong. I can clearly see that. They don't want to be questioned about, not that Tom Lydon would have questioned them about any of these important facts. Obviously he didn't, or if he did, that got cut out. But you could tell they really wanted to make sure that nobody asked them these relevant questions that we've been asking here for a long time.
And key word is relevant. I mean, there could be a documentary made, an entire documentary on this, made just focusing on the police errors and the investigation mistakes on all this. And that goes on to say, for people not familiar with the case, is that there was not one or two or three slip-ups by investigators here. There were dozens of things that were wrong or inappropriate, from the Minnesota State to the Apple Valley Police to the special the FBI group, or the Minnesota what's the word I'm looking for, Sophia? Special
BCA.
Bureau, BCA. So the Minnesota BCA.
BCA.
There was errors made at all levels of the agencies involved in this investigation. It wasn't just a few bad cops here, a few bad cops there. There were errors made, and we can't get around them, as far as they're not easily explained, as far as were they just errors, were they slip-ups, or were they done on purpose. There's some very strange things in this whole investigation that took place, and rightly so, for us pointing the finger to look at them. And all we're doing is exposing them, just saying, here's what took place and here's what did not take place. Now, it says Mr. Barsanti then moves on to the spooky movie trailer David and the Gray State team released back in 2012, which included a mysterious entity implanting RFID chips into children, leaving a triangular scar probably meant to evoke the Trilateral Commission. Very good point. I'm more concerned about David, Kamel, and Ronnie discussing a mysterious entity following them into their final days. But you're right, they do that. The mysterious RFID chips is a way to track people and put their banking on digital currency inside of the implantable into the body. There would be no cash, there'd be no currency, there'd be no coins. Everyone's tracked that way, which I think is also a very true thing that could be coming into fruition here as well, because what that does, it enables the dissenters, the government dissenters, to be turned off. You cannot partake in the economy if your wallet is turned off. If your digital ID is shut off, you can't buy and sell things. You can't do anything. Basically, you're in a prison with no walls. That's what they're trying to do. And I think that is true. It had nothing to do with the movie, though. But that scene was mentioned in the trailer, and rightly so. I think that's a very good scene in that trailer.
Yeah, and it's interesting that he connects it with the trilateral, the pyramid. I connected it with the pyramid, things like that. But the Trilateral Commission, I never actually really made that connection. So maybe Chris Barsanti, maybe he's done a little more research on this type of stuff than I thought. So even he is speculating, assuming
that either. It does look like a Trilateral Commission kind of a logo.
It does. Yeah, you're right.
I always connected the pyramid and the all-seeing eye with the Illuminati.
Right. I mean, if he's going, this is like a darker place, the darker thing, I would think he would try to connect it with that. And the Trilateral Commission, I don't know. I mean, I know they're not very nice people and everything, but that may be, for me, that may be giving them too much credit. I don't know.
Now, finally, it goes on to say the footage of Kamel is particularly tragic, Barsanti writes, given that she was the one financially and emotionally supporting Crowley through his artistic misadventures, only to possibly fall prey to the same delusional fever that overtook him near the end. Now, this is a very disgusting phrase, I think. Now he's throwing him, David, under the bus, Kamel under the bus, and saying that she's the one supporting him financially and emotionally. We got a lot of this right when the case came out as well, as far as David was broke, he didn't have any money, and that's why he was in this depression that caused this double murder, and he didn't have any money. So we know that's not true. We've already done episodes on that. We've covered that ground. He had just won a contract, a movie deal, so it was not financially. And even when he was working these 2 or 3 businesses on the side of these side jobs that he was indeed doing, although he wasn't making it rich, he was bringing in money. He was self-employed on some of these jobs and running these small businesses. She herself was making money, but I don't think she was supporting him. He was very emotionally guy, and I think he was very didn't need emotional support either. He was very strong in his IQ and his brain level, very intelligent. That I don't think he needed support. But this article mentions that she was doing all this work and led herself down that same rabbit hole because
she wasn't even working at that time. She had quit her job back late April, early May.
Yes,
I think.
And so he doesn't mention this in the review, but she wasn't working. Really, David was supporting her, to be accurate. I think that she had a book deal that she was going to be writing some kind of a book on dietary nutrition or something, I believe. That wasn't really fully vetted out, I don't think. But correct, she had left her job at the time and was starting her own baking business like that as well.
Yeah, I would think it would be even better to say, I mean, if we look at the $14,000 check that's there, David's dad may be the one who's actually supporting both of them. There may be a good case for that logic too there.
One could argue. Yeah, on the doorstep for the newer listeners, that was left along with the gifts and the Christmas gifts was a check from David's father for $14,000 as a potential Christmas gift, a year-end tax donation, gift. Who knows what it was for, what the intent was, but they were not hurting for money, and they had very well articulate budget pages in the journal and the notes that came out later in the investigation of how they tracked their money, their utilities, their monthly bills versus what was coming in versus their mortgage payments and things like that. So they were very budgeting type folk people that had that on the brain. Now, Greg, you finish up here with you're in bold print after the review. It says, overall, I wonder if Barsanti truly believes David was a murderous alt-right paranoiac, or if he realized an article about when fantasies kill equaled clickbait. Your guess is as good as mine. Yeah, now we're talking clickbait with titles like this. So how many is that, Greg? Are we on the fifth one?
Yeah, that covers all five of the first five there, and maybe that's a good place to actually stop.
Yeah, that was the first five, and I think, Sophia, if you remember this, weren't the first five out there right away? Yeah, before the other folks, the general public started watching the film and leaving reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. These first five were out there way in advance, as if they all dropped at the same time, and that's the ones he covered here in his book. And it does make me believe that these were in the can, ready to go, and ready to assist. So with the propaganda of Mr. Eric Nelson.
That was actually before my time in the group, so I honestly have no clue when the articles came out. But
okay, and before you joined, we were talking about that as Greg and I think that when the Rotten Tomatoes page for this movie came out and it was out there right away, within a couple days, these reviews, all five of them were out there, and then there was no activity for a while after that. They were just dumped right away, almost as if the folks didn't have time to even watch the movie yet, and there were these five articulate reviews already written.
Yeah,
so that they were dumped ahead of time, right as it became available as part of the orchestrated event, I'll call it. So that leaves us, Greg, on page 128 to pick up the next episode for the podcast here starting on 129 with the title Alec Wilkinson, who plays another hefty role in this propaganda piece, Greg.
He sure does. Big role, I would think. We still have the paper copies, Dan. I think you're the one that sent me that you got that for me. Thank you. I still have it somewhere.
Yeah, we have those. I sent you some. We do have the paper copies when these came out, and the printouts along with the article from Alec Wilkinson in the what article in the New Yorker?
Yes. Yeah. Death of a Dystopian. So that should be fun.
Yeah, I'm going to have fun with that one. I've been doing my research.
That will be good. That's all I've got for today. Anything else, Greg?
I think just lastly, let's just end it with here. I was just looking up. We talked about the Rotten Tomato meter or the tomato meter. It's at 100%. 18. This is so. Last time I checked it, there were just 5. So there's 18 people who have actually reviewed this. All most of them before the end of 2017. Looks like one. The latest one was in February 18th, 2019.
So
They all have very nice things to say about it.
It's still at 100%.
It's at 100%. That's at 100% for the critics, right? For the whatever they call them, the all critics at 100%, top critics at 100%. 18 of them. The tomato meter, the percentage of approved tomato meter critics who have given this movie a positive review. So 18 reviews, they're all positive.
Wow.
Now for the audience, it's a little bit different. They're at 60% positive, over 100 ratings. It looks like 3.4 out of 5 average rating.
Well,
so
what we may do, Greg, when these episodes are done with the book, is to delve into that audience one and have some shows on that.
Oh,
That's going to give us, I think, a very more realistic review of the film versus these approved critics.
All right, I like that idea.
I would put my money into that 60%. As far as I think we're going to get some very truthful commenters out there versus these the reviewers, the official reviewers that are pushing an agenda.
Sounds good, my friends. Any final words here?
None for me. Nope.
Sophia?
Sorry, I was muted.
It's all right.
No, I really don't have any final words. I'm just looking forward to the next one where I get to expose somebody for being a quack.
Oh, okay. I hope you can wait a whole month for that, because we'll be back July 1st.
Yeah, I can wait. So it's worth the wait. But anyway, it was good to be on another podcast. It's been a while.
Absolutely. And Dan, this was episode 29, you said? Is that what it was?
29th. This is the 29th one we've done.
All right. Well, there we go. And we'll be back again July 1st. Expect us then.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks,
All
guys.
right. All right. God bless everyone. Good night or good day.
Good night.